Hello everyone, welcome to Worlds Week here in Amsterdam. Rich Hagan sitting alongside the Pro Tour historian Brian David Marshall, Mr. Zach Hill from Inside R&D over the last few years. We cannot wait to bring you an incredible 5 days. First things first, gentlemen, one thing you're most looking forward to over the next 50 or so hours of live video coverage from here in Amsterdam, BDM.
I'm looking forward to seeing Reed Duke sort of recover from last year's performance at the Players' Championship. He said after doing so poorly last year that he just desperately wanted to get back to this tournament so he could redeem himself this year. He's had an incredible year. Took up to the last match of the Pro Tour season to get back here, but he did. And now I can't wait to see what he does.
Okay, Zach, what about you? Something from this week, the highlight.
I'm looking forward to seeing Yuya Watanabe. He delivered a absolutely commanding performance at this event last year. I think, really demonstrated his excellence as one of the true all-time greats. And I'm looking to see if he can put up a repeat performance. It's unprecedented.
Okay, and for me, well, it's Scotland in the World Magic Cup. Kilts and all.
Of course it is.
Of course it is. But seriously, I think they've got a good chance this year. All right, so here's what's coming your way over the next 5 days of wondrous magic. First of all, we begin with the 16 players in the World Championship. So who are these 16? Not so much in terms of names, but how do they get here, BDM? Where do we start?
Well, for one thing, we take all of our champions from the previous year. We have the Magic Online champion, Dmitry Budakov. We have the defending champion from last year's Players' Championship, Yuya Watanabe. We have our Pro Tour winners. We have Stanislav Sivka. We have Tom Martell, and we have Craig Wescoe.
Right, okay. Now, Zach, there are also some regional slots at the table.
Right, so there are 5 regional slots in a normal year. You've got North America, Europe, the Asia-Pacific region, Japan, and Latin America.
Right.
Now, this year in particular, though, some of those regional champions are also Pro Tour winners and at-large invitees, or previous champions. So in this case, these drop down and you get more of what you're about to be telling us.
The at-large bid. So the two regional, we have Asia-Pacific, Li Shichan, and then Latin America, Willie Adel of Brazil. Okay, so then you have the at-large bid. So the at-large, this is essentially the Player of the Year finishing list from last season until you fill up the 16 slots.
And of course, worth mentioning, the Player of the Year himself gets a slot.
Oh, he's here as well?
It is kind of nice.
Yeah, Josh Adelaton is here. Now, across the 5 days and the 2 complete championships that we're bringing you, we have no fewer than 7 formats. And we're just going to take a minute before it all gets crazy to just explain a little bit about what these formats are. Our very first format of the weekend, Brian, is Modern Masters Draft. What is Modern Masters?
Well, if you talk to the players here, it is the creme de la creme of draft formats, right? This is a booster set that was released to feature, the highlights of modern format and some hard to find cards, but also just brilliantly built into it a lot in the common and uncommon slot are some of your favorite draft strategies. Whether that's Storm or Affinity, all sorts of stuff. People love this draft format. It is very skill testing, and I'm very, very excited to see the best players in the world drafting what many people are saying is the best draft format.
Right. Okay, so that's Modern Masters Draft, and you'll see not 1 but 2 of those drafts happening live very, very soon. Then we go to Constructed for our second half of day 1, and we go to the world of Standard. And it's the Standard that you kind of know and love. Except, of course, we've got M14 in the mix, which is only just starting to make itself felt on the Standard world. So, Zach, again, for people who come in new, what is Standard? What cards do we see?
Yeah, Standard, it's a word we throw around all the time. It essentially means the last 2 years' worth of Magic cards. So we're going to see Magic 2013, Magic 2014. We're going to see Innistrad block cards, and we're going to see Return to Ravnica block cards.
So altogether, that gives us 8 sets going into Standard. So this is right at the biggest, most available card pool for Standard.
Exactly. This is right before the big rotation, which will happen when Theros comes in October.
The technical term is swollen to bursting Standard.
So
There we go.
The official terminology. Yes.
Swollen to Bursting Standard will end day 1 here. On day 2, they all come back, the 16, and they're playing what we call Swiss pairing, so they play against other players on the same record. They come back, they draft again. This time, it's M14. Now, BDM, not everyone's really got to grips with M14 yet. What should we be looking out for there?
Well, Magic 2014, it's still pretty new. There's a lot of different things you can do in there. Life gain has been surprisingly big part of the draft format.
Do you know how many life gain or gain life cards there are in M14? There are 26 cards in the set. It is a huge something.
I've watched the draft. I haven't seen a ton of Magic 2014 drafts yet, but the one draft that I saw that was most dominatingly won was someone playing with Bubbling Cauldron and Angelic Accord.
Game 4, have a 4/4.
Throw in a Tenacious Dead, and you've got some really filthy things happening.
Okay, so filthy things happening tomorrow morning. Then, down the stretch, 3 rounds of Modern. Now this is, if you want a big format, Modern's your guy. Zach, tell us about Modern.
Right, so Modern, you can sort of think of it as all of the cards that are legal with the quote-unquote new card frame, the card frame that debuted in 8th edition. So it goes a long way back. I think everything after Scourge. So
pretty much a
first
decade. It's Mirrodin, isn't it? So 2004.
Exactly. So, and what you tend to see, just a lot of really powerful decks. There's no rotation once that starts happening.
Right,
so
it just keeps punching another hole in its belt.
Right.
At the end of 2 days, we'll take a bit of a pause. 4 players will go through to the semi-finals, which happens on Sunday. We'll get to Sunday in a minute. But then we turn our attention to 71 countries. Crazy. Flags all around the hall, I can tell you. They are all coming in to play in the World Magic Cup. We have 3 more formats to tell you about. So, BDM, M14, Team Sealed.
So, Team Sealed is a format where 3 players will play, although in this case, 4 players will be building 3 decks. You take 12 booster packs of Magic 2014, you lay them all out in front of you, and you try to find 3 decks that your team can play. It is very challenging. Magic 2014 would seem to be easier than a gold set, right? Where, because you just have the 5 colors and there's a couple combinations. But I can tell you, we did a practice draft of this, sealed of this the other night. And we had so many blue-white cards, for example, that we were able to build 2 completely different blue-white decks. And while you're probably not going to do that because there's some key cards you want, you could have this very, very aggressive flyer deck, or you could have a deck with 2 planar cleansings. You probably don't want those decks combined.
Right.
So, there's a lot of decisions to be made, a lot of adjustments up and down the dial that you can make also in games 2 and 3. You have such a sideboard. All the cards you don't use get divided up into 3 sideboards as well. So you have 20 or 30 cards. You have possibly a whole other phase of the game, beat down, control, combo, that you can sideboard into for the second 2 games.
Do you ever get the impression he's quite excited about M14 Limited? I think he is.
Team Sealed is really one of the most fun formats. If you get a chance to go to a Team Sealed GP with your friends sometime in the next calendar year, you should do it. It is a lot of fun.
It really is. Now, I'm going to say the word standard again, but I'm going to put in front of it the words team and unified. So what does that mean, Zach?
Yeah, Rich, the way I like to think of unified standard is that if you stacked all of your decks on top of each other, form a 180 card another deck, that deck would have to be standard legal. So what that means is that you only get to play up to 4 of one card between your 3 different decks.
Right.
So no 4 Scavenging Ooze here, 4 Scavenging Ooze here. The really tricky thing is that applies to your non-basic lands. So, you're probably not going to field 3 black-green decks, for example. So a lot of the challenge of the format is deciding how many of the powerful cards in Standard you can construct using mana bases that work across 3 different decks.
Well, I can tell you.
And sideboard cards, too. Yeah, exactly.
If you want to know how all this works out, I can tell you that Hall of Famer Frank Karsten, who's with us all week on the text coverage, he'll be in here at the desk to go through the intricacies of Team Standard. And Ben Stark, who's on the ballot this year for Hall of Fame, along with many other very worthy candidates, he's going to be at the news desk later in the week to talk us through the limited team format. So that's super exciting. And then we get to Saturday. We're almost through the weekend. We then get to return to Ravnica. Team Sealed.
So this is a completely different animal of Team Sealed. In this case, you're using 4 packs of Return to Ravnica, 4 packs of Gatecrash, and 4 packs of Dragon's Maze. So again, 12 packs. So you have 5 piles when you do 2014 Team Sealed, right? Maybe you have your artifacts up here, but really, everything's laid out pretty neatly. it is just like a Jackson Pollock painting when you're laying out your piles for Return to Ravnica Team Sale. There's so many color combinations, all the guilds, all the different artifacts. Where do I put these guild gates? Very, very challenging format. Gonna be. I think both formats are equally challenging, but I think they present different challenges.
We will get into the nuts and bolts of the team competition. There's pool play, there's 32 advancing to Saturday, 16, 8. We come back on Sunday for the biggest day of Magic you will ever see, which is the quarters, the semis, and the final of the Team World Magic Cup. And then we will have 2 semi-finals back to back. They won't run simultaneously. We'll give you every play-by-play of the World Championship semi-finals, and then a world champion will be crowned. But all of this begins, those 50 hours, with the first draft. And I can tell you that the draft pods are in. So let's take a look up on the screen and we can tell you who is going to be playing with who. Let's take a look, if we can, at our scoreboard, which we've divided into the 2 draft pods. So on the left-hand side of your screen, pod 1 features Willie Adel, the Latin America representative, the Israeli national champion Shahar Shenhar, the 19-year-old, Shuhei Nakamura with his 5 Pro Tour top 8s, Reed Duke on the path to redemption, the Russian, the unknown quantity, the Mox champion Dmitry Budakov, David Ochoa from Channel Fireball, the Player of the Year Josh Utter-Leyton, and one of the favourites for this tournament, Eric Froelich. That's Draft Pod 1. On your right, it's Asia Pacific, Li Shi-chan, Martin User of the Czech Republic, one of the gods of the Grand Prix game, Yuya Watanabe, 6 Grand Prix titles, 19 Grand Prix top 8s, Ben Stark, one of the great limited players of all time, Tom Martell, Pro Tour champion, Craig Wesco, Pro Tour champion, Brian Kibler, the Dragon Master, repeat Pro Tour champion, and Stanislav Sivka from the Czech Republic.
Oh, by the way,
Pro Tour champion. Those are our draft pods. Do you not think we could have done a bit better? I feel a bit ashamed of that lineup, really. Deary me. Those are your lineups for the first 3 rounds here at the World Championship. What we're going to do, the first draft table is ready, and it seems only fitting that we begin with your reigning Player of the Year, Josh Utter-Leyton. Let's take you down to the booth, and for the first time here at Amsterdam for 2013, it's a very good morning to Marshall Sutcliffe.
Hey everybody, welcome to the booth here from Amsterdam. My name is Marshall Sutcliffe, and I am joined. Who is this guy? It's Luis Scott Vargas. We've got him in the booth and around the coverage area for the whole duration of this 5-day megalith of an event. How's it going, Luis?
Pretty good. I've been threatened to be chained to the booth, but that hasn't actually happened
yet. I heard
yet.
somebody threaten you that, yeah. He's going to be spending a lot of time in the booth. We listen to what you guys say. We know how much you love when Luis is in the booth providing color commentary, and he's going to be doing a lot of that. Now, you and I are going to be talking today about Modern Masters Draft. We're going to be covering 2 drafts. The first one that we have, the first player that we're going to be covering is one of your best friends, Josh Utter-Leyton. You got any thoughts about how he approaches this format?
So I've watched Josh draft a number of times. He, like many of the other players here, likes going for the kind of linear, powerful decks. I mean, like Rebels, Storm, well, not as much Storm, but Affinity, Fairies. Modern Masters, the way the set's built, you really do want to be doing something powerful. You don't want to just draft good cards because
most of the cards in the set are good cards. Yeah. We're going to be watching him draft. We're going to bring you every pick of the full 3 packs. Then we're going to do our second draft. For that one, we're going to have Yuya Watanabe.
Yeah, the returning champion.
The returning champion, and really just one of the most solid players out on the tour for the last few years. Any thoughts about how he might approach the format?
So I've seen him draft exactly twice so far, and once he had the straight nut Affinity deck with Arcbound Ravager and everything.
Yeah, he ran me over with that one.
Yeah, me too.
Yes.
And then the second one, he had the not nut Goblin deck with a lot of Face Vaulters. So.
Okay, so it looks like he likes to be assertive.
Yeah, hopefully he ends up closer to the Affinity deck than the Goblin deck, but Goblins is a good deck sometimes.
Yeah, now let's talk a little bit about the format in general. You mentioned that there's a lot of linear archetypes and that those are often the most powerful. What are the fringe archetypes? What can people look at that aren't all artifacts or all goblins?
I mean, Giants is one of the supported archetypes, but you don't really want to be there unless you have Thundercloud Shaman, just because the spells are a little bit clunkier than kind of the rest. Besides Giants, you also have 5-color green is definitely a good archetype, but is really dependent on opening something like a Moloko or a Kaiga, just one of the more powerful cards in the format. And then there's Dredge, which I saw Shuhai draft yesterday, but I've never really seen come to fruition. So
I had a huge. So the first time I drafted Dredge in this format was on Magic Online, and I ended up with an awesome Dredge deck, and I won the draft, and I'm like, yeah, Dredge is a real thing. And unfortunately, it turns out that I was very lucky and assembled every piece, and that's really difficult.
Yeah, you need like multiple Worm Harvests, like a ton of a ton of Dredge cards, and even then, like if you don't get enough Stinkweed Imps, like you can just die to their creatures.
That's right. So there's definitely some fringe archetypes that if they come together, they're very, very strong.
Definitely.
But at the same time, very difficult to do. For an event of this level and for players of this level, would there be any benefit for them to go for one of these offshoots, or do you think they're going to try to keep it more straightforward?
I would be surprised if anyone drafts Dredge, because like you said, even if it is open and you get all the right cards, that can be good, but it's a little riskier than drafting something like Rebels. Rebels, if you have 3 Rebel Searchers and 4 of the Rebels, you have a good Rebels deck, or at least a decent one. So I'd be surprised if players really want to take the higher risk strategies, especially since the payoff isn't necessarily there for some of them.
Yeah. Now, what about Storm?
We might see a light Storm deck, but for the most part, I don't think that people are going to go completely all in, just because the light Storm deck with some Empty the Warrens is actually fairly strong.
Okay. Well, I am told that the players are ready to begin this draft. So why don't we head down to the feature match area right now to watch Josh Utter-Leyton draft some Modern Masters.
Good morning. I would like you to.
All right, here we are in Amsterdam for the World Championship. We've got Modern Masters draft for you here, and we're going to be watching Player of the Year, Josh Utter-Leyton, affectionately known as Raptor to his friends. He's going to be drafting some Modern Masters here, so we're going to take a look at what Josh wants. Now, Luis, you were saying that Josh prefers the strong linear archetypes available here in Modern Masters. So we're going to take a look right now to see what he has. He's got his first pack up. Let's see what he's pulled to the front here.
Rebels is the deck I've seen him draft the most, and there's a Cloud Goat Ranger. So
yeah, his rare is a Woodfall Primus, not a particularly good card in this format, but Cloud Goat's one of the best cards in the
Cloud
format.
Goat's like, I would say, in the top like 5 to 10 cards in the format, and it's really only competitive with a bunch of other rares.
Yeah.
So I'd be shocked if he didn't take the Cloud Goat here, but I think he wants to look at what everyone else is going to take, because there's a number of other good cards here. The Riftwing Cloudskate and Wrathy Trapper and Torn of Stone are all quite strong and sure to be among the top 5 picks or so.
I've seen Pestermite go pretty high in this format as well.
Yeah, it's very good in the Fairies deck. But Cloud Goat Ranger is definitely one. And Josh, you got to be happy to open a Cloud Goat Ranger.
Yeah, that's got to be one of the best. It also goes in multiple decks. You can throw it into the Affinity deck that's blue-white. You can throw it into the Giants deck.
Yeah.
Basically, any deck that runs white will have that card.
It's just an amazing card.
Yeah. All right, let's see what his second pick will bring him here and what direction he'll go. He's thumbing through, and it doesn't look like a particularly strong pack here, Luis.
No, there. Not only is there nothing super powerful, there's nothing that goes all that well with Cloud Goat.
Yeah.
He can take Drag Down as a -2/-2. He can take Aether Spellbomb because blue-white is one of the better color combinations in the format, and it's really good in the Affinity deck. So I wouldn't be surprised if he takes the Spellbomb. There's also Fiery Fall and Tribal Flames, both of which, again, you don't really want to second pick any of these cards, but as it turns out, he's going to have to.
Would you take the Fiery Fall or the Tribal Flames if those were the two choices?
I would probably rather have Fiery Fall than Tribal Flames, just because the fixing is pretty nice. So it looks like Josh is going with the Fiery Fall, which I think is a perfectly reasonable pick. Even though I don't love red-white, if you get a good red-white deck, it's still pretty strong.
Yeah, and Fiery Fall is really nice for that. All right, let's take a look at the next one. There's a Stir the Pride in the front of the pack here, and it doesn't look like a whole lot else for him. There's an Imperiosaur and a Latchkey Fairy he's pulled to the front.
Yeah, Imperiosaur is really good in like the green ramp deck, and Latchkey Fairy is very good in the Fairies deck. The Fairies deck doesn't often end up blue-white, though, because then you miss out on Pepper Smoke and Thieving Sprite, which Thieving Sprite is in the pack, but
and
it's not really what you want to.
Yeah,
it's not really what you want to go into here. I'd say that Stir the Pride is a good combo with Cloud Goat. Sudden Shock is a decent card, just good removal spell, but Imperiosaur is, I think, the strongest card here, and green-white is actually pretty decent. Just big like green cards and like decent high curve white cards.
Yeah, as long as you can get the power level on individual cards, and Imperiosaur and Cloud Goat certainly live up to that.
Also, Fiery Fall does go well in the 3 to 4 color green deck.
Okay.
Collect.
All right, let's see what Josh has here. There's a Trigon Predator right to the front. There's a Dream Spoiler, which is, all right, Glacial Ray is what he's pulled up.
Yeah, there's a Glacial Ray. There
Skyreach Manta, I see he's thumbed to the front here as
Yeah,
well. Do you
Skyreach
think
Manta's a
he's going to start
consideration.
looking for a 5-color or 4-color type brew here?
I think he's going to take the Glacial Ray out of this pack just because it goes well with Fiery Fall, just strong red cards, and then kind of go from there.
5 seconds.
Okay.
If White's getting completely cut, he might have to abandon Cloud Goat as good as the card is.
Yeah. That's one of the
Pick off.
beauties of Modern Masters as a format, though, is that the
Shuffle
overall card
your
quality is so
booster.
high that you can actually throw away
pass
a
the
first
cards
pick,
to your left.
and it doesn't really punish you that bad.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a shame if you have to do that, but you know, you don't have control over what's going on. Though Avian Changeling is an interesting possibility here, since that is one of the stronger cards in the Rebel deck, just having it to search up. And if you end up in Red-White Giants, which he might actually be,
Yeah.
then it kind of holds everything together because it's a cheap giant.
That's right.
There's also a Dirkwood Bailoff if you want to go towards the green path, but it looks like Avian Changeling gives you the highest chance of still playing Cloud Goat, which is definitely in the forefront of Josh's mind.
Absolutely.
5 seconds.
Yeah, that's one of the nice things about the Giant deck, too, is that you can play Avian Changeling, and you can throw in a
Pick a
random
card.
like Amru Scout or something like that just to
Yeah.
search up that and like a Bound in
Shuffle
Silence.
and pass.
Also, getting an
cards
Avian Changeling here
to your
means
left.
that White might not be completely cut, which, I mean, it could just be that the packs broke that way, so... Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Okay, yeah, never mind. Josh is firmly back into White. Flickerwisp and Amru Scout and Sanctum Gargoyle, so...
Yeah.
So this has got to be a breath of fresh air for him. He knows now
Yeah.
White's not getting cut.
Right.
The last couple packs just didn't have any White cards. So I think...
So Flickerwisp is the pick here, or
I think he's actually going to go with the Amru Scout. He's got
Okay.
an Avian Changeling already
5
and
seconds.
end up in Rebels. I mean, they're both very close.
I can't resist.
Yeah,
Pick a card.
Flickerwisping the Cloud Goat.
Cloud Goat.
But yeah,
I don't have that kind of willpower.
Shuffle
I mean,
and
the fact
pass.
that White is open and
cards
he already
to
has a
your left.
Rebel means that I think Amru Scout is a very strong pick there.
Yeah,
Especially
it
since
seems fair.
White, he's also cutting it pretty good, except for this last pack. He hasn't passed any White cards either. So this pack, obviously not quite as strong, but you have a Vivid Land, which are always nice to pick up just in case.
Yep.
And other than that, I mean, he could take Paradise Mantle
seconds.
if he thinks he's going to end up Affinity, but I think that is probably not going to happen at this point.
Pick
so
a card
looks like
shuffle
Vivid Land it is.
and
Yeah.
pass the cards.
Saw him
Your
give a
left.
little smirk there as he picked it. I'm like, yeah, well,
Yeah, I mean, what can you do, right?
yeah.
But
Collect.
his draft is actually going pretty well. This last couple packs, I think, really did put him in a better spot. I mean, maybe the White cards aren't flowing as well as he would like, but I think he's got a strong start, and picking up now a second Fiery Fall plus a Glacial Ray
5 seconds.
means he's got a decent amount of removal as well.
And a nice setup there where he can use Glacial
Pick a
Ray on
card.
early creatures, Fiery Fall to take out the big stuff.
Shuffle
Yeah.
and
He-
pass
also,
7
with two
cards
Fiery Falls and
to
a
your
Vivid
left.
Land, he could splash almost anything. If he opens like a Moloko or something, then it's very easy for him to just go into a third color.
Collect.
Though at this point, Imperious Sword does not look likely. See, Kithkin Greatheart is another reason that Avian Changeling is very good.
Yeah, and he pulls it right to the front as well. Definitely leaning towards the Giants
5
end of thing at
seconds.
this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's got right now. This is the first card that really pays him off for having
Pick a
giants,
card.
but
Yeah.
Cloud Goat Ranger and Avian Changeling kind of imply that future
Shuffle and
giant
pass
cards
6
might be
cards
good.
And
to
he's
your
already
left.
in red, so if he opens up any decent red Giants.
Yeah, you can also get
Collect.
Crush Underfoot like almost last, just because almost no one will want the card.
Yeah, there's one deck that wants it.
5 seconds.
Sends Enlistment's actually like a decent filler card. If you end up getting flooded, you can just start
Pick a
making a bunch of
card.
Kithkin.
Shuffle and
The rest
pass
of the pack
5
is just all
cards.
affinity cards or fairies cards, which hopefully someone
Collect.
else is drafting not too close to Josh, but for the most part, I think he's pretty safe. Looks
Okay.
like no one's in the Dredge deck here.
5 seconds.
That's too bad. Dredge is a fun deck to watch,
Yeah.
but
Pick a card.
it does not seem
Shuffle
incredibly
and
likely
pass
that
Yeah.
that's,
four
anyone's going to
cards.
end up there.
On this grand stage, it seems like not the best place to try for the
Collect.
Dredge deck. All right. There's a Sentinel Wood Readers and a Thala Germinator. A couple of decent green cards, but nothing
Pick a
really.
card.
You know, we're definitely in the later part of the pack here.
Shuffle and
Yeah,
pass
I
3
mean,
cards.
Thalid Germinator is not bad if you end up in the Thalid deck, but
Correct.
I don't think that's what Josh is trying to do here.
Right.
Grape Shot is a decent consideration. I mean, you're not going to play it
Pick a
in very
card.
many normal decks, but
Shuffle and
against a
pass 2
bunch of one
cards.
toughness creatures, sometimes it's worth considering like
Collect.
sideboarding in.
Just a Storm for 2 or something and get a 2-for-1 out of it.
Well, a last pick giant,
Pick a
or second
card
last pick giant, and a
and
last pick
pass the
frogmite.
last
So
card.
And there's a Street Wraith to wrap up that pack. All right, so
You have
Josh
to
is
wrap
going
up
to
the pack.
30 seconds.
So
to do your
Josh is
picks.
going to get it. There we go. We can take a look at what he's got here. Definitely leaning towards red-white at this time, but like you mentioned, with 2 Fiery Falls and a Vivid Grove, he does have the ability to splash a single color, off-color bomb here. And again, we were talking about it earlier. One of the great things about Modern Masters is that with the power level of the cards being so high, you can certainly change directions and not be, out of out of the running right
Yeah,
away.
it's hard to end up short on actual playables.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you miss a couple picks here and there, you're going to
5
end up with your
seconds.
23.
That's right.
And so Josh has a solid 7 playables here with Hammerheim, Deadeye,
Please
Sens
put
Enlistment
your
as
cards
decent sideboard
face
options.
down
Okay.
in a single pile.
All right, so we're going to be
And
heading into
take
pack
the
2 here
booster
for Josh
label.
Utter-Leighton. This is the first draft of the Modern
Please
Masters
count.
portion
There are
of the
15
World
cards.
Championship here. So this is a huge
Face down.
draft for Josh. This is the Player of the Year wanting to get off to an
This
amazing
booster will
start
turn to the
again
right.
in this initial draft.
Yep, and he's
Pick up your cards. You
hoping
have
for a
40
Sword of Fire and
seconds.
Ice here.
Yeah.
How does he not go straight to the rare? That's
Oh, wow, another Cloud Goat? Jeez.
All right,
There's
well-
also a Kitchen Finks, and I saw a Kataki's War's Wage that he could pick up later, but
Well, the Kataki is foil.
so wow, double Cloud Goat Ranger here for Josh Utter-Leighton. He's got to be happy to see
Yeah,
that.
I mean, sometimes it's your day, and today is apparently Josh's day.
Yeah,
so.
now what is he looking to wheel here? There's a War Spike changeling I see. There was also an Armory.
Yeah, Veteran Armor and
Veteran
Warspike
Armor?
Changeling. Or Kataki. I mean, it is funny that Kataki is just a 2-1, but every now and then it hoses Affinity.
Yeah.
And then there's
There's
also
a
the
Crush
Crush
Underfoot,
Underfoot,
yeah.
which is going to wheel, unless someone else is giant somehow.
Uh-huh.
So I think he'll wheel a
Pick a
playable
card.
out of this pack.
Yeah.
Shuffle
I've also
and pass
played
14
Rune Stalactite
cards
before.
to your
If you
right.
get enough Kithkin Greathearts, it's actually not the worst.
Because you can even just equip it to the Kithkin
Yeah.
Great card itself, right?
Yeah, and then it becomes
Correct.
a 4/3 first striker.
Yeah.
So let's see, what's Josh getting past? It looks like an Amru Seeker or a Kithkin Greatheart. He probably does not need a third Fiery Fall, is my guess, just because you don't really want to draw too many of those. Electrolyze is a very good splash card. I would never fault someone for taking an Electrolyze, but
I also would not. Now, which one do you like between Seekers and Kithkin Greatheart, if those are the
I
choices?
think he's going to want to take the Seekers here just because he's got a Rebel Search already. Mold Disaster is a consideration, though.
Okay.
That card is fairly powerful. You can jump your Cloud Goat Ranger, then Molten Disaster, though you do lose all your Kithkin in the process.
5 seconds.
So
Ideally, you win the turn or you win the game that turn, but let's see
Yeah.
what he takes.
it looks like
Pick
the
a card,
Molten Disaster.
shuffle and pass
It's
13
it's
cards
certainly the most
to your
powerful
right.
card. So
And he has a pretty reasonable chance to get one of those other 2 cards that he's shipping back as well, since it's so early in the pack still.
yeah,
Correct.
I think that you end up with enough of those other cards that it's worth just to taking the risk of taking the slightly more powerful card, even though it might end up not being as consistent
Yeah.
with the rest of the deck.
All right, he's got an interesting choice here. So he's pulled Ivory Giant to the front, but there's also a Kithkin Great card and a Sandsower in the pack. Now,
Yeah.
with 2 Cloud Goat Rangers, does Sandsower start to become more of a consideration here?
Yeah, it's not a card you almost ever want to play in these
Yeah.
giant decks, but with double Cloud Goat, you might consider it. I think Ivory Giant is going to end up being Josh's
seconds.
pick here just because it works so well with all the other cards you have.
Okay.
And if it's in your opening hand, it's
Pick a
very, very
card.
good. It's
Okay.
not the best to draw on turn 5, but
Right.
Shuffle
one
and
casting
pass
cost
the
suspend cards
cards
generally are like that.
To your
Now,
right.
this is interesting. He shipped away 3 Kithkin Greathearts. There's a reasonable chance that he
Correct.
wheels those.
Yeah,
And
or
if
at least
so,
some
his
number of
deck
them.
will be quite strong in the Giants front there.
Yeah. So I like Sanctum Gargoyle, but he doesn't really have any spell bombs to recur with it, which is like the most common one. I think Amru Seekers just gives you another rebel to search for, which he right now only has 1, so I think he would not mind picking up another one.
Okay.
Sandsower is a consideration, like you said, because of the Cloud Goat Rangers, though. So it'd be interesting to see if he thinks he might
5
wheel
seconds.
Amru Seekers. I could definitely see taking Sandsower here.
Which one do you think's more likely to wheel?
Pick a card.
I think that given that you've passed 2 Kithkin Greathearts and 2 Amru Seekers,
Shuffle
I think getting
and
some
pass
number
the
of those
cards
back
to
is
your
not
right.
unreasonable.
Okay.
Also,
he did take the Sandsower.
Collect.
yeah, the difference between having a Sandsower and not having a Sandsower is a little bigger than a common that you might be able to pick up later as well.
Okay. He's got a Pyrite Spellbomb pulled to the front. There's not much in this pack. There's a Gleam of Resistance, which doesn't seem super great in his deck.
Yeah,
He does make a
it
lot
is
of
cool
tokens.
with Cloud Goat, though, because
Yeah.
it untaps the tokens, so you can pump Cloud Goat, untap them all, and then attack. But
like
he's
that.
just going to take the Pirate's Bowl, I'm sure. Just the cheap removal spell is
Yeah.
too hard to pass up.
Pick a card.
Looks like he did grab the spell bomb.
Shuffle and pass the cards to your right.
All right, let's see what Josh is going to take here. Now, he's certainly settled into groove here. Red, white are his colors. He has
Yeah,
access to splash.
oh, there we
Ooh.
go. That late Flicker Wisp is insane because it's
That is insane.
not only great with the Cloud Goat Rangers, there's also just like a ton of other combos like Ivory Giant even
Yeah.
that you can end up picking up, and Josh's got to be happy about that.
Yeah, Flicker Wisp has so many great interactions in this format. You know, one of the ones that I discovered early in a draft, thankfully I
5
was on the
seconds.
good end of it, was Skyreach Manta.
Yeah,
Yeah, just get rid of that thing.
yeah, just
Pick a
killing your
card.
opponent's Skyreach Manta is pretty
Yeah,
sick.
pretty nice. And then, by the way, you've got the
Shuffle
3/1
and
flyer.
pass
So
9 cards to your right.
Yeah, he's got to love that Flicker
Collect.
Wisp here.
Yeah. There's a late search for tomorrow if you were to 5-color green, though. Otherworldly Journey, for many of the reasons this Flicker
Yeah.
Wisp is very strong.
Yeah,
So,
that's a card that I always have a hard time fitting into my final 23, but with 2 Cloudcoat Rangers, it would certainly be a lot more of a consideration.
yeah,
5 seconds.
it is one of the more fringe cards. He also has a Glacial Ray, too, and it is an arcane spell. So that is
Oh, okay.
another relevant point.
And it's a fairly cheap arcane spell as well, so yeah, for just the 4
Shuffle
mana.
and pat the cards
Yeah.
to your right.
So it is funny. It looks like
Collect.
Telmartel and Kilbur would both be 5-color green at this point, given Raptors packs. And there's the Flicker Wisp. I guess Raptors just getting completely rewarded here.
Wow!
So I don't think that he's going to even consider the Thundering Giant, even though it is a giant card. Flicker Wisp is just a giant beating.
Right.
5 seconds.
Now, and especially the second one. Now, Thundercloud Shaman
Pick a
is a
card.
card that he has not seen yet.
Shuffle and pat the cards
How
to
important
your
is
right.
that for what he's doing here? Does he want one of those really badly, or is it kind of optional at this point?
Collect.
I mean, it will kill a lot of his little guys, and it looks like he did wield a Crush Underfoot and a Veteran Armor. The Veteran
Yeah.
Armor is a nice curve filler here.
It's very nice here.
Thundercloud Shaman would be nice, but it's not crucial to the archetype. It's just like
5
another one
seconds.
of those nice bombs. One of the good things about Thundercloud Shaman, though, is
Pick a card.
if anyone to his right opens it in the next
Shuffle
couple
and
seats,
pass
there's a
6
pretty good
cards.
chance that he gets it. Not very many decks are going to be able to play it in pack 3.
Collect.
Okay.
So it is a kind of fussy card. Oh, there's Amber Seekers. So
All right.
he's got to be in pretty good shape for
5
Rebels.
seconds.
It's also foil too, so
Pick a
there's
card.
additional implied value. Now he's going to have to sleeve though.
Shuffle and pat 5 cards. Collect.
All right, there's the first of the Kithkin
Yeah,
Greathearts.
this pack's pretty great for him. It looks like this
5
draft is
seconds.
going very well.
There could be 2 more Kithkin Greathearts coming in the next 2 picks here, too.
Yeah,
Pick a
and if
card.
the first one and the Amber Seekers wield, it's
and pass
you know,
4
not that
cards.
unlikely that the other ones come too.
That's right. Let's see what he's got.
Collect.
All
Oh,
right, not there.
The-
And this pack doesn't really have anything for him.
yeah, those are among the
Pick a card.
three most common commons to be in the pack still.
Yes.
or whatever.
Pat 3 cards.
I guess 2 of them are uncommons, but yeah,
Collect.
it's time to see if he peels the Great Heart. It looks like he could pick up a sideboard card. Dispeller's Capsule is a good thing to bring in against Affinity,
Yeah.
Pick a card.
so it's unlikely that there will be 2 cards
Shuffle
left.
And
Just
pass 2 cards.
because the other competitors are
Correct.
reasonably likely to hate cards at this point.
Right.
Looks like Dredge is wide
Take
open
a
though. He
card
could have been Dredge.
and pass the last one.
I think he knew before he sat down that he could have been Dredge. All right, so
Yeah.
that's the second pack here for Josh Utterley, and he's going to get a chance here to review his picks. We saw him take
You
a big
have
big
45
pause
seconds to
when
review
he
your
found
picks.
that Veteran Armorer,
Yeah.
trying to review his curve in his head.
Yeah, because the one thing about Veteran Armor, though, even though it's a strong card, it's not a Rebel or a Giant. It doesn't fit into any of the tribes, which is actually very relevant. And like Flicker Wisp doesn't either, but Flicker Wisp is much more powerful, so there it's not very hard.
Right.
But putting a 2-drop in your deck that doesn't help any of your tribal synergies is something that you don't always want.
Right.
So Josh has a pretty good start. I don't know what his total card count is here, but he's got to be fine. He wheeled a bunch of cards this pack.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's in a spot where he not only has more than enough playables, his deck is also looking very good.
Yeah, it looks super strong. And remember, we've got a whole nother pack to go here.
Yeah, so he's probably on pace to open 3 Cloud Goats.
Easily.
Yeah, I mean, he's 2 out of 2 so far.
And
so.
then pick 6 and pick 7, Flicker Wisp.
yeah. He could have had 3 Flicker Wisps if he
Yeah.
didn't take the Amber Scout.
Yeah.
But I
he
think,
looks like a
seconds.
genius now. His curve is a lot better than it was.
yeah, well, also Amber Scout I think does better. Also,
Please
Molten,
put
Molten
your
Disaster
cards
plus
face
Flicker Wisp.
down in
I
a
mean, it doesn't hit
single
non-flyers,
pile
or it doesn't hit
in front of
flyers,
you.
so.
There you go.
And open your last booster.
All right, here's the third
Once
pack.
again, please count
This is Josh Utter
face
Layton. He's
down.
drafting Modern
There are
Masters.
15
This is the
cards.
first draft of what's going to be a long tournament schedule for these players.
Yep, and let's see if he's unlucky enough to only open Sword of Fire Ice instead of a 3rd Cloud Goat.
Pick up your booster. You have 40 seconds.
All right, he's looking through
Yeah,
here.
there's the Thundercloud Shaman.
There's the Thundercloud Shaman. He pulls out to the front.
And a red cap.
A red cap, right. So what do you like here, red cap or Thundercloud Shaman?
I think that Thundercloud Shaman is just slightly better. I mean, they're both very, very good cards. You're happy either way. But the fact that you have a bunch of Giants, you have right now 3 Giants and a pretty reasonable shot at picking up more, means that Thundercloud Shaman is just a more powerful card. It'll get you out of more situations. I do think that Josh's deck is strong enough that he can take the more powerful, if less consistent card.
Okay.
Though Murder's Redcap's also insane with all the Flicker Wisps, so this is a pretty tough choice.
It's also just cheaper,
He's
right?
got an embarrassment of riches here. Actually, with the double Flicker Wisp, I think Murder's Redcap
Pick a
might
card.
actually be better.
Okay. And it looks like he's
Shuffle and
agreed with
pass
you. Now, there was
14
also a
cards to your
blinding
left
beam in
again.
that pack there.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing to consider wheeling, though. I doubt that it's going to come back. It's a fairly strong card in a lot of the different decks. Though Giants might have been open enough that he could wheel a Thundercloud Shaman. Not that I think that's actually going to happen.
Yeah, he's got a Bound in Silence. There's also a Greater Gargadon here. Does he just have to take Bound in Silence?
Yeah, I think the removal is bound to be better. Even though the Greater Gargadon is very strong, I think you're going to end up, especially the fact that you have a Rebel Seeker and a pretty good shot at picking up a second Rebel Seeker, it's pretty tough to pass the pacifism here.
All right.
Bound in Silence is a tribal aura rebel, so Amru Scout can pick it up, as well as the second Amru Scout he's probably going to pick up this next pack. So.
Yeah, there's a Hillcomber Giant that he has a decent shot to wheel if that's something that he's interested in as well.
13 cards.
Yeah, I'd imagine that is going to wheel. That's not a card very many decks want.
No, it's also double white.
Collect.
And, well, all right.
I
Well, it
see
looks
a
like
Blind Spot Giant there.
yeah, he doesn't have enough Giants to really make that tick.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think he can take a third Firefall. He could actually take Wrathy Trapper here because he's got the 2 Landcyclers and the Vivid Land and the Rebel Seeker. So the Vivid Land Wrathy Trapper is not the most spectacular of combos.
No, it's not, especially because his Vivid Land happens to be green and not the black one.
Yeah, though I do think Wrathy Trapper is actually the pick here, just because you don't really want a third Firefall, and making your Rebel Searcher get a tapper is much better. I think his mana can actually support this.
Okay.
So just one swamp with the 2 Firefalls is almost enough, especially if
5 seconds.
you don't end up having a ton of intense color requirements. Though he does have a double
Pick a
red
card.
and double white here.
Shuffle
A
and
lot
pass.
of double white, actually.
Especially the Cloud
12
Goat
cards,
Rangers
sorry.
and the Flicker Wisp, which are some of the key
Collect.
cards.
Luckily, his double red card gets cast off swamps too, so he
that's
does
true.
have that going for him.
All right, there's a Bone Splitter. Wow, that's a pretty late Bone Splitter here.
Yeah, I think that's like a pretty decent pickup. It makes a lot of your dorks a lot more threatening, and with like Amru Seekers and Flicker Wisps, you've got a bunch of evasion creatures.
Yeah, a Flicker Wisp holding a Bone Splitter is frightening.
Yeah, so I think it's going to edge out Sudden Shock or Sanctum Gargoyle here. And Crush Underfoot is just this isn't the Turbo Giants deck. It's a deck
5
with some
seconds.
Giants in it. So
Now, there's a Stir the Pride there, too. Is that a consideration?
Pick a card.
I don't think that Josh is actually going to need that. He's got a lot
Shuffle
of
and
late game
pass
going
11
for him.
cards.
Okay.
Like cards that make you win when you have Cloud Goat are decent,
Collect.
but if you have Cloud Goat, you're probably in a good shape anyway. So
Yeah.
you'd rather have cards that help when you don't.
And just standalone good cards.
Yeah, so it looks like another Amber Seekers this pack. This pack hasn't been as exciting as Josh had hoped, but I guess his first 2 packs may have heightened his expectations a little bit.
Yeah.
So I think he's still in pretty good shape here, though. Picking up Bone Splitter and a couple decent guys to fill his curve, plus a Murderous Redcap
5 seconds.
is pretty strong. He's really kind of going off with these Flicker Wisps.
Pick a card.
All right, there's the Amru Seekers for Josh
So yeah,
Utterley.
more than anything, he would want an
Shuffle
Amber
and
Scout
pass the
here,
cards
but
to your left.
it's becoming less and less likely that that's going to happen.
He's just got the one Searcher currently.
Collect.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, he's got Veteran Armor or Test of Faith here, or Torn of Stone. Actually, is a
Yeah.
a nice pickup. It's pretty hard to argue with just dealing 4 to a creature.
Right.
And
Instant
it's
speed
his
as well.
3rd Arcane spell now, so he might get some splice action going on. You don't splice Torrent very often, but when you do, it's fairly effective.
Yes.
Since, I mean, sacking
5
2 mountains
seconds.
means that you don't expect the game to go much longer, but if you're casting double Torrent of Stone, then
Pick a
usually
card.
the game doesn't go that much longer.
That's right. And he's got plenty of threats to push through after
Shuffle and
clearing
pass
the
your
way.
booster.
Yeah. Once you've cast your Cloud Gut, you don't need the mountains
Collect.
anymore.
Right.
So.
All right, let's take a look. He's got a Plume Veil there at the top.
And then a Stink Drinker Daredevil if he wants to turbo out Cloud Goat, but I don't think he has quite enough Giants to really make that tick.
No, that card can be really, really crazy if you're the 15 Giants deck, but
5 seconds.
Yeah,
I
his
don't
deck
think
is
it's
just going to
worth it.
stink. So. Plume Veil is a very good card, but
Pick
I
a
don't really
card.
like it in non-blue-white decks. Drag
The,
down
the
is-
triple white's just prohibitive.
Yeah,
or-
it's just really hard to
Shuffle
cast.
and pass
Also,
8
Josh is
cards
actually pretty
to your
aggressive.
left.
yeah.
Drag down's a nice pickup. If he ends up splashing Wrathy
Collect.
Trapper, he might want to splash Drag down as well.
Yeah, -3/-3 at instant speed's nice.
Yeah, and he picks up another one too, which makes it maybe more attractive. He could pick up a second Dispeller's Capsule for the sideboard too.
5 seconds.
Now, unfortunately, the drag down doesn't do a whole lot of things that his burn spells don't already do
and
themselves.
he does already have like 5 burn spells or what
Yeah.
have you. So
Yeah, that's why the Trapper seems a lot more
Shuffle and
critical to
pass
this
7
plan, right? Because it
cards.
Yeah.
does do things
To your
that
left.
the burn spells don't. It can tap down anything.
yeah, I mean, he ends up
Correct.
like being like decks like this can be weak against something like Imperial. Ooh, the Blinding Beam did wheel, as did the Kataki. But I think Josh is going to want the Blinding Beam here. He's got Kataki's not that much different than a random 2/1 for 2.
Right.
And then
5
Tribal
seconds.
Flames is just a sorcery speed 2 damage spell. So, picking up the Blinding Beam is a nice one.
Pick a card.
I am kind of surprised that came back. Not shocked, but I didn't think it would.
No,
Shuffle and pass
it
6
usually
cards to your
doesn't,
left.
but I mean, if it does, it looks like White was open for Josh,
Correct.
but there weren't actually very many White cards in the pack, which is part of the reason that it was so open. I mean,
Yeah.
that is how you get 6-pick Flicker Wisp.
Right.
But
5 seconds.
he did get, I think, a little unlucky in the fact that his 5th and 6th pick White
Pick a
cards were
card.
generally not that great. But you can't really complain when you open 2 Cloud Goat
Yeah.
Rangers.
Shuffle and pass 5 cards.
Yeah. I can see you can see Josh there. That's how he looks when he's really, really happy.
Yeah, also really, really angry.
Yeah.
5 seconds.
So
Tough to read. All right, there's another blind spot giant, but like you mentioned
Pick a
before,
card.
Luis, he doesn't really seem to be in the fully
Shuffle
tribal
and pass 4
giants
cards.
deck
No,
here. He's got
I-
a couple of side synergies, but
I'd be surprised
Correct.
if he ended up playing it. It just doesn't quite get there. Hating the Thieving Sprite here seems like a fairly good call.
Pick a
I
card.
would love to hate that.
Ooh,
This-
so
Shuffle
would
and pass
readers.
3 cards.
Thieving Sprite is a very good card.
Yeah.
In the good fairies decks, it does quite a bit of work. There's a Deep Cavern Imp if he wants to search out another rebel.
Yeah.
Pick a card.
The
Though
Rift Elemental.
drawing it is
Shuffle
kind
and
of
pass 2
miserable.
cards.
Yeah,
Yeah, he's not going to
Or
play any
having
of
it in
those
play.
cards.
yeah, and then another Send Enlistment,
Pick a
nice
card.
little foil draft there.
And pass the last one.
And Dredge still open.
All right, so that's going to do it for our draft with Josh Utter Layton. We're going to get a chance to, as the players are building and that kind of stuff, we can usually try to kind of peek over their shoulder a little bit once we get out of the booth to check them out. But we're gonna do that. Now we're gonna come back here for a second, and then we're gonna be watching yet another draft. So it's all Modern Masters all the time here from Amsterdam. And,
Watching a bunch of Masters draft Modern Masters.
Yes, absolutely. And welcome back to the booth, Marshall Sutcliffe. That's Luis Scott Vargas. So, Raptor, 1 to 10, how happy is he?
He's got to be at like a 9. I mean, the
his-
only way
his
it could be a
deck's
10
very
is if he
powerful.
picked up a second Rebel Searcher, but his deck is still insanely powerful.
Now, the thing I'm curious about, the thing when I'm drafting that I'm thinking about is where are the holes for this deck? What am I missing? What am I going to have a hard time dealing with? What do you think that Josh's deck is going to have a tough time with?
For the most part, he's actually got his bases pretty well covered. I mean, against Imperiosaurs and Dirkwood Baloths, he does have a Bound in Silence, potentially a Wrathy Trapper, and an Amru Scout to go get those 2 cards. Plus, he's got Cloud Goat Rangers, which is just insane.
Right.
I think maybe a hole is like a fast affinity deck or a storm deck that kind of doesn't interact in the same way. Since the affinity decks can actually just explode and have 7 things in play on turn 3, and storm can kind of ignore most of your creatures and try to kill you around the time when Cloud Goat Rangers are going off. They can maybe empty the warrens for 10.
Yeah.
But for the most part, he's going to beat most decks in a fair game with double Cloud Goat, Red Cap, double Flicker Wisp. He's got a pretty limitless amount of power.
It's going to be insane when he gets
yeah.
that going. And then, we even saw, all the way down to the low end of his curve, he picked up like a Bone Splitter, right?
Yeah, he's got
And-
Bone Splitter, Veteran Armor, another 2 Kithkin Greathearts is just 2 drops, which I imagine end up making it, especially with the Avian Changeling there.
Yeah, and I mean, those things just put in a lot of work as well. I like how his deck can hit from different angles.
Yeah, it is actually kind of funny that the Thundercloud Shaman that he wanted to play in his deck is actually very good against him as well.
Yeah, that's true. And that is kind of interesting. All right, it looks like we're going to throw it back over to the news desk for just a little while. When we come back here, though, we're going to have another draft of Modern Masters, this
Indeed.
time with Yuya Watanabe. Guys, we'll see you in a few minutes.
Only another 4,000 odd matches to go this week. So, sometimes we don't always get the most exciting drafts. You sit there, you never know what you're going to get. We haven't been on a great run of 3-0 drafters in the last few shows. Maybe this is the one that's going to change. Luis said on air he thinks Josh would be a 9 out of 10. BDM, where do you rate it?
I was very, very happy with how that worked out for him. It's hard to complain about double Cloud Goat Ranger, double Flicker Wisp,
Right.
and a Murderous Red Cap that you can do some disgusting stuff with your Flicker Wisps.
Right, yeah, I mean, and he's got Otherworldly Journey too on top of that. So, I mean, we have a nice blend of just like synergy and also consistency. He's got a really solid mana curve. He's got a reasonable amount of card advantage. He's got removal, aggressive creatures. I mean, it's really what you're looking for in an aggressive white deck.
Underrated card that I think is going to be really good in his deck is Sandseller.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that card's going to really shine in his
So
deck.
that's tap 3 untapped creatures you control to tap something down.
Correct.
Okay.
So he's got that ability to make a bunch of creatures. He's got the Sense Enlistment too if he plays that. So he can do a lot of, he can really control the board.
Modern Masters is a set of incredible synergy. Almost every card interacts in very many ways with other cards in the set. There are two areas where, if you were being super greedy, you might have looked for things. The fact he has one Rebel Searcher is one. You would ideally like two, not just from your own point of view for having the second, but the fact that there may well be, because there is a black-white Rebels archetype in Modern Masters,
Very
which
successful
potentially,
one, by the
yeah,
way.
absolutely. So where are those scouts? Where have they gone that they didn't come back? So that's one little question. And the other thing, I want to ask you both about Thundercloud Shaman. Now, you know, he's a player of the year, but when I see a Thundercloud Shaman and I've already got some giants and I know I'm red-white, by taking Thundercloud Shaman first, I guarantee that those blind spot giants, which nobody at the table will ever want, is bound to be mine, and I can pick them because I want them actively. And as we saw through pack 3, there were lots of giants that he could have run with Thundercloud Shaman. He takes Red Cap. Is it because of the Flicker Wisp stuff going on there?
I think the Flicker Wisp Murderous Red Cap interaction was very strong for him. It lets him slow the game down. Like he gets to put that Murderous Red Cap down, kill something, block something, Flicker Wisp, kill something. I mean, I think, you know, the Thunderclaw Shaman, he's already got a couple 5s. I don't know that, I think he was looking for more control of the early game.
I think he wanted to be able to control the early game. I also think he's just paying attention to the rest of his strategy. You know, I mean, you're a deck that's like going to win some games by putting a Bone Splitter on an Amru Seekers.
Yeah,
so.
and you know what else Thundercloud Shaman kills? A lot of his creatures.
Yeah, sure. Right.
Yeah, absolutely fair. Now, let's take one quick look at the scoreboard to show you who is in Pod 2 coming your way. The players are sitting down right now. So on the right of your screen, you're going to see Li Shi Chan, Martin User, Ben Stark, Tom Martell, Craig Wesco, Brian Kibler, Stanislav Sifka, so both Czech players
You
in the
forgot
same pod.
one.
I didn't forget him. Patience, patience. They have all been outside watching that first draft back, I can tell you, and making their
Correctly.
comments about, oh yeah, and saying, hey, we'd all have been 5-color green by now. And so we are going to head back down for the second draft, and we are going to see one of the big stars of the show this week. It is your reigning world champion, and it's Yuya Watanabe. Let's hand back to Luis Scott Vargas, and first, Marshall Sutcliffe.
Hey, thanks, Rich. Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas. Now, we just watched Josh Utter-Layton, Raptor, draft a pretty sweet red-white deck. Cloud Goat Ranger ×2, 2 Flicker Wisp, and he looks to be pretty well positioned. Transitioning to the second draft pod, remember we've got 16 players in the World Championship, so these are the other 8 players. We're going to be watching Yuya Watanabe now. Any prediction on where he might go?
I think Yuya is flexible enough to just go with whatever's open. I mean, he does draft very, very well, and he doesn't really need to force anything.
Yeah, you mentioned that the couple of drafts you've seen him do, he had 2 different archetypes. It looks like the players are ready right now. So let's head down to the feature match area for Modern Masters Draft with Yuya Watanabe. All right, welcome to coverage of the World Championship here from Amsterdam. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe. I'm in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas, and we are going to watch Yuya Watanabe. He won this event last year.
He did. He beat Shouta there in the finals, and
The nearly unstoppable Shouta.
Yeah.
You have 40 seconds.
And
All
let's
right.
see what he opens. Well, there's a Yosei.
Yosei is not bad though. In this format, it's not as much of a windmill slam when you're trying to draft these broken affinity decks and whatnot.
Right.
It still looks like a pretty good pick here. I mean, there's Careful Consideration, which is solid. There's Worm Harvest for your favorite dredge deck.
Yeah, I do enjoy the dredge deck, though. I don't know how great it actually is. We take a look at Yosei, the Morning Star there.
Yeah. There's also an Aether Spellbomb if you really wants to draft Affinity, though. I don't know if he wants it to the point of taking Aether Spellbomb over Yosei. There's also an Aether Snipe,
5
though.
seconds.
If you're taking a 6-drop, you should probably go with the Dragon.
Wow,
Whoa, he
Worm
takes the
Harvest.
Worm Harvest.
Now, there was a
Awesome.
Stinkweed Imp in the pack.
And I think
So-
he was trying to see if he could wheel it.
Yeah, he's just trying to count out if there's
enough.
enough playables in the card in the pack to see if it'll come back.
All right, looks like Yuya has to have practiced this archetype a number of times. You don't make picks like that unless you have. So
Yeah.
this is going to be pretty interesting to see where this goes.
I like this.
Yeah. So for the dredge deck, now you've got, assuming you're just black green, you've got Penumbra Spider and Marsh Flitter both as pretty solid options. It looks like
Yes.
you might be considering the Bound in Silence as well. Maybe just audibling into Rebels.
Now, the one thing about the Dredge deck, if that is where Yuya ends up going, is that it's very much a long game deck. It's very much hinged on Worm Harvest providing inevitability. It will win the game at some point. It just needs to stay alive indefinitely.
Yeah, and I think Marsh Flitter does kind of
seconds.
support that plan.
Yeah,
so.
but both Spider and Marsh Flitter do.
Yeah, Marsh Flitter is just a much better aggressive card
Yes.
and a good blocker. It does
Yes.
both those things.
Shuffle
So
Yes.
it's also
13 cards.
pretty more
your left.
immune to like Bound in Silence than the Spider. If the Spider gets pacified, there's not really much it can do.
That's right. So he's, keeping the door open a little bit here, and he's going to see what else comes his way.
So it looks like Yuya not taking Yosai there means he really wants to draft one of the like powerful linear decks. It looks like he's not interested in drafting a fair deck with good cards. He's just going to draft one of the like broken decks with like Affinity or Dredge or Goblins, like one of the decks that does something very, very specific.
Yes. Now he's pulled a Tysus to the front here. What do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, the nightmare of commentators around the world. What do you think about that card?
I think it's reasonable. It's kind of interesting what it does to a game when you suspend it on turn 2. And I think that alone is almost worth playing it just because sometimes your opponents don't play their good creatures
Yeah.
or don't play any creatures,
Yeah.
and you can actually just
Shuffle
time walk
and
them
pass
5
12
times.
cards.
Right, because you get to keep
left.
playing yours, and then
Yeah.
you can just kill your worst thing.
Yeah, you do have to kill something, but
Yes.
yes. So it looks like he's staying black. I would imagine that he's looking to go into black-green because of the Worm Harvest. Though
Ooh.
a Mad Auntie 4th might mean that he could audible into Goblins here, especially since there isn't a ton of Dredge stuff. There's also Pestermite, which is really good in the Fairies deck.
Yes.
So you could end up blue-black with Marsh Flitter, Pestermite, and Thysis as a good start.
Yeah.
So he's basically deciding between, looks like Torrent, Pestermite, and Mad Auntie as to kind of which archetype he wants to go into.
Yeah, remember the Marsh Flitter makes 2 goblins, so
Yeah.
Mananti already decent, and he takes
Yeah.
it. I do like the goblins deck in this format, but you really, really need a good version of it for it to be great. I mean,
Yeah,
you need
its
a
cards
lot
are
of good
certainly
stuff.
like less powerful than a lot of the other archetypes
Yes.
just on their own, like Mog War Marshal or Face Falter.
Right.
But they do combine well, so if you can pick up enough support, then you might end up in a good spot.
Now, I saw a Thieving Sprite there in this pack. There's also an Absorb Viz.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't really want the Land Cycler. Thieving Sprite is decent, and he could go back into Fairies, especially since Fairies can just play Mad Auntie to go along with the Marsh Flitter. There's also a Spore Sower Thallid if he does want to stay black-green.
Yeah.
It looks like
5
he's going to have to
seconds.
make a decision kind of soon here, though. Spore Sower is the strongest card in the pack, so
He could
looks like he's
call.
just going with that.
Yeah, super solid 4/4 for 4 mana. And on top of it,
Shuffle
it adds a
and pass 10
bunch of
cards.
spore counters to your creatures.
So it looks like he might still be going for the kind of Dredge option here.
Yep.
And the good thing is, a lot of the Dredge cards you want are very late picks. So Moldervine Cloak does have Dredge, but I don't know how crucial it is to
Yeah.
that actual deck.
I saw there's a Rift Sweeper in his hand there. He does have a Tysus, but it can be pretty decent.
Yeah, Rift Sweeper, again, not optional, so you do have to watch out for that.
Yes, I am keenly aware of this.
Yeah, I heard the pain in your voice there. But Rift Sweeper is also really good against the blue decks because they have Ephemeron and Riftwing Cloudskit that are both pretty awesome.
Mhm, there's been a couple of
Shuffle and pass
Dirkwood
on
Balos
booster.
and those kind of
Yeah.
things floating around as well.
Yeah, you can also pick up a Rift Bolt every now and then.
Collect.
So looks like he is sticking with the black-green plan.
There was a Death Deny. There just hasn't been a whole lot as far as solid directions to go, and there hasn't been a whole lot for his black-green deck either.
Yeah, there hasn't been a whole lot for Dredge, though Desperate Ritual is actually a Goblins card secretly because it combines with Empty the Warrens, which is one of the most important
seconds.
parts about the Goblin deck.
Okay.
So looks like, again, Yuya's keeping his options open in terms of drafting something broken. He's not interested in drafting a fair deck in any way.
Right.
Shuffle and pass 8
I like
cards.
that. I can respect that.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, that is the sort of thing I like doing as well, but so far he's not really finding any footing here. It looks like a second
There's a
Worm Harvest.
Harvest.
And the thing is, he's got to know that no one else is taking any of his Dredge cards.
They're just not there yet?
Yeah, which maybe that's too big of a risk. I don't know. He's got to decide here because there's also a
5
Grinning
seconds.
Ignis, which is good in the Warrens deck. I think that he's going to go with Worm Harvest, though. Yeah.
Yeah. We saw him move in very hard in that first pick
Shuffle
Yeah.
and
with
pass
the Worm
7 cards.
Harvest, and now he picks up a second one, and getting 2 to 3 of those is certainly important for the deck.
Yeah, and then following it up, he could be like Goblin's Dredge with Festering Goblin Madonti, like
Not a
Marsh
staple
Flitter.
archetype in the format.
I'm going to say it's not the most drafted archetype. He might just take the Relic of Progenitus
Just
because,
hate it out.
yeah, I mean, if your opponent has that, it's really hard to win in your Dredge deck.
Shuffle and pass 6 cards.
Oh, looks like he took the Thallid Shell Dweller, perhaps.
Collect.
We'll see.
That's a really, really good card for making the game go long.
Yeah. Ooh, and Empty the Warrens this late. Yeah, he's got to be
5 seconds.
kind of regretting the Grinning Ignis pick now.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's tough. You never
Pick
know
a
what's going to
card.
happen. And also, Empty the Warrens is not a card that usually goes, 14th or
Shuffle and pass your booster.
12th or what have you.
Right. He
Collect.
certainly seems interested in making a bunch of 1/1s one way or another.
And the Stinkweed Imp did not wheel out of his opening pack.
No, it did
5
not.
seconds.
Which is probably not a great sign. Now, there's a spell setter. So he's got options open on Fairies, Goblins, and Dredge.
Now, he does have 2 more packs to go. We are in the first pack
Shuffle
here
and
of
pass
Modern
4 cards.
Masters, so the door is open for Yuya. When he reviews his picks, it might look a little scattered, but he's going to be able to pick up in
Ooh,
pack 2.
Yeah,
wow.
that's a super late Latchkey
Very
Fairy.
late.
So, yeah, he might be on the prowl for more fairies here, especially
Shuffle
since
and
even
pass
though he
3
didn't pick
cards.
up the Thieving Sprite, he might end up being able to just
Collect.
audible into one of these decks. And then now you've got, I guess,
Pick a card.
Thallid to go with your Spore Sour Thallid.
to go with your Latchkey Fairy.
Yeah, well, are Thallids rogues?
Collect.
We've got a rogue Thallid here.
Pick a card. And
So,
pass the last
Yeah,
one.
reviewing his pack is going to look a little strange,
Showing
Right.
but
coverage.
the good thing is that he's able to kind of move into a number of different decks based on what he sees pack 2. He's got to make
You
the
have
decision quickly
30
though. Like
seconds to
pack
He
2,
does.
mid pack 2, you've got to know what you're doing. So
Right now, he has access to Dredge, to Fairies. He's got access to Goblins,
Yeah.
somewhat to a Stormy, Empty the Warrens, but that could also just be in Goblins. And then he's also got access to like a Thalids deck.
yeah, so the key is he's got access to a bunch of different decks that all have black. Black green, black red, and black blue. So
Okay.
and his black does have his most powerful cards in the dark. He looks like he has quantity-wise the most green cards with just the 2 red cards and the 2 blue cards. So
5 seconds.
I suppose green is the most attractive from that point of view. He also, picked up Thallid Shell Dweller, so he
Please
could
put
still
your
really
cards
easily be Thallid
face
Dredge
down
here.
Yeah,
in a single
He could
file
be. And that
in
actually
front of
works
you.
quite well because we were
And
talking earlier
open
about how you
your
want to make the
booster
game go
label.
long.
Yeah.
And Thalids actually do a pretty good job of holding down the
There are
ground.
50
Yeah, so-
cards face down.
At this point, I'm not sure what his optimal open is. Probably just something powerful like a Sword of Fire and Ice, but like,
Yeah,
you know,
but beyond that, he needs a direction.
yeah, he needs to figure out whether he wants Stinkweed Imp, Desperate Ritual, or Latchkey Fairy in his deck. So, which is not usually the choice you
Welcome
have.
to Modern Masters.
Yeah, Modern Masters is a nice one.
All right, there's an Electrolyze. I saw a Thirst, Spore-Sour Thallid,
So he's got
and there's a Warren
Warren
Pilferers.
Pilferers.
which goes into like 2 of his 3 decks as
and
well.
Sporloth Inction. Inction is very good in the Thallid deck, and then
Mm-hmm.
Pilfer is very good in the Goblins deck, and I imagine it's pretty good in the Dredge deck. Mm-hmm. So he's got a number of good options here. Either way, it looks like he's taking a 5-drop here. Though he could be taking Warspike Changeling to go into Goblins, though I think that's probably not quite as safe as just taking the Pilfers. Pilfers is by far the card he's most likely to play.
And you mentioned that
5
all of the
seconds.
archetypes that he's interested in revolve around black, and that's the best black card in the pack.
Pick a card.
Yeah, I think that's probably got to go into his decision there, is that which of these
Shuffle
cards am I
plus
most
4
likely to
cards to your
play?
right.
Right.
You know, especially since they're all of like pretty similar power levels. Like
yeah.
Warspike is the least powerful, but it's also the cheapest. You know, those often go together. So
Collect.
these are some big packs for him because here's where he really has to decide. And it looks like he's going to have to get to delay that decision because
Yeah, he's-
Executioner's Capsule is just a good card in
He's
any of
just
his
going
decks.
to take the solid removal spell,
Yeah.
and again, the best black card in the pack, and he's still going to be able to just delay figuring out what color he's going to play with it and what strategy that
there
puts
is
him in.
a Moss Dog and a Reach of Branches, both of which fit into Dredge, so he might be looking at wheeling one or both of those.
Yeah, even then.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know at what point
Reach
it's
is
too
fine.
late.
Yeah, but Moss Dog is like just okay in that deck.
Yeah, I certainly think that Stinkweed Imp
5
is kind of
seconds.
like the optimal Dredge card for the deck.
It is the card, right?
Because it protects you and dredges a lot.
Yeah, it's a 1-2 punch. It
Pick a
dredges the
card.
most, and it keeps flyers and ground guys at
Shuffle
bay. I
and
mean,
pass
they
your
cast
booster to the
Imperiosaur, and
right.
you have your Stinkweed Imp, and you're just like, hey, man, bring it on.
Well, I might call it a 1-2 death touch, not a 1-2 punch, but I get the
Fair.
idea.
Fair enough.
So another Pilfers here, another Tysis, and a bunch of Dampen Thoughts.
Yeah.
Is it too late to go into Dampen Thought?
I mean, at this point, I wouldn't predict anything from you. He can go any direction. Probably just going to pick up another Pilfers here, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, he's considering the Mog War Marshal and just going into goblins.
Yeah, he's got that Mad Ante. That's that's the card for goblins in this format.
It's second only to like Tar Pitcher here, but again, he's got to be deciding. The Warren Pilfers is certainly the safe pick. The Mog War Marshal is certainly the better card for the deck if he ends up drafting that deck.
All right.
So looks
Shuffle
like
and pass
goblins
12
is his preferred
to your
archetype.
right.
Though, again, he's not locked into anything, which I'm sure is not something he's happy about.
No, that's really great when you're in the first half of your first pack, but now that you're about
Collect.
a third of the way through the second pack,
Yeah.
you really want to be dialed into a solid direction here. But these packs have not really cooperated on that front. He finds a Glacial Ray
And a
There's
Grinning Ignis.
yeah.
So he's got options here. The Grinning Ignis is basically just to empty the Warren's combo card. Glacial Ray is the best removal spell, and Fiery Fall can tie it all together maybe, but I think Glacial Ray is probably going to end up being. It's just cheap enough that that you want to pick it up, and it can be
seconds.
really good if you end up with enough arcane spells.
There you go.
He's got like Desperate Ritual already, so that is a spell that can work out pretty well.
Desperate Ritual. He's also got the Empty the
Shuffle and pass
Warrens
11
Yeah.
cards to your right.
So
for his Goblins deck potentially.
I feel like he's in Goblins now, so we'll see if that holds up. He's got a
Collect.
number of cards he can get late that would work well in the deck, so and not very many of them are present here though.
no.
Thieving Sprite is actually fine even by itself,
Yes.
though it's not like the best. Hammerheim Deadeye is more of a sideboard card than anything else. Street Wraith's not the worst either. I mean, the fact that it's a split card of cycling or a 3/4 kind of
5
hard to block
seconds.
guy makes it worth it.
Right.
But
Looks like he likes the Hammerheim Deadeye here.
yeah, again, mostly a sideboard card. I haven't really been super happy about main decking it. You can, but
Shuffle and pass your booster.
it's not good against enough decks, I don't think.
All right, let's take a look at his next pick here.
All right. Well, there's a Warspike Changeling and a Manamorphose. Manamorphose is very good, especially if you pick up a second Empty the Warrens. So he has to decide again. This is still more power versus consistency.
It is.
The Warspike Changeling is going to be more consistent in your deck, but Manamorphose is going to be more powerful. But you have to pick up multiple Empty the Warrens to really make it that good. So
5 seconds.
looks like he's going with the Warspike. I feel like he's taken enough power over
Card.
consistency picks this draft so far that I think he's trying to dial it back and
Shuffle
actually just end
pass
up with a
9
playable
cards
deck.
to your
All
right.
right.
So
He only has one more pack after this
Collect.
to make sure that he gets to 23. And, we saw that he wanted to move in hard. Wow. There's a Dream Spoiler, which is there.
yeah, but Face Vaulter is good with Warrens,
Yeah.
both because it's a cheap spell and because it eats all the goblins and hits for a bunch. So, especially given that he doesn't have a ton of instants, that's a late Eternal Witness too.
5 seconds.
Yes.
But
But that ship has sailed, it seems.
yeah, but that was
a
quite
card.
some time ago. So, I think he's in a decent spot
Shuffle and
here,
pass 8
but
cards.
the first pack was rocky enough that
Collect.
he's going to be struggling if pack 3 does not go well.
He picked up a legendary goblin.
He did, or a Warren Pilfers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Squee's not going to make the cut here.
No, and if
5
you have a
seconds.
sacrifice outlet, you can go off with Squee and empty the Warrens. You just need a million mana.
Pick a card.
So he's settled in. He basically needs to find a Tar Pitcher,
Shuffle
another
and
Mad
pass
Auntie,
7
and like
cards.
another Empty the Warrens. Then
Yep.
he'll have a very good Goblins deck. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
that's a lot to ask, but those are the cards that are really crucial to the deck. So some combination of those is really what he's looking for. And Warspike Changing Wield, so that is certainly something he's got to be happy about. The good thing about being in Goblins, too,
seconds.
is that, I mean, there's so many good archetypes that you're basically the only person in Goblins most of the time you draft the deck.
Right.
I mean, the trick, of course, in this draft format is finding the archetype you're the
Shuffle and pass
only one
6
person
cards.
drafting it.
That's right.
Since all the cards, or a lot of the cards tend to be narrow enough that you don't have to compete with anyone for them. So, looks like Dredge is wide open, but
Yeah, there's a death denied that he could consider.
yeah, he's keeping the options open on Thalids.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, I did take the death
Shuffle
denied
and pass
there.
5
yeah,
cards.
Death Denied's decent. I mean,
Yeah.
with double Warren Pilfers, you probably don't need it,
Collect.
but it is a good card to have in your arsenal. And there's another one. Looks like Dampened Thought is also open.
Yeah, both of them came back, so nobody moved in hard on that archetype.
Yeah, which is reasonable. Again, there are so many archetypes
Pick a
that it's
card.
hard to, they're not all going to be drafted in the same draft.
Yeah, we talked about, you and I
Shuffle
talked
and pass
before
4 cards.
the draft here about the fringe archetypes that are available, and Dampened Thought is one of the most fringe
Ooh,
archetypes.
Grinning Ignis Wield. So that is a good sign.
That's good for him.
All right, so
Pick a card.
at this point, he's actually got to be pretty happy considering how this
Shuffle
pack
and pass 3
started.
cards.
And if he picks up another Empty the Warrens, he could be in a really good spot.
Yeah.
Collect.
So, yeah, there's the Thieving Sprite that keeps hanging around.
Yep.
Pick a card.
Looks like Thalids are done, but
Shuffle and pass 2 cards. Collect.
All right, so he's winding down the last couple of picks here from
Yeah.
pack 2, and you got to feel like he's not thrilled with this draft at this point, but that he's at least relieved that he found some direction here in this second pack.
yeah, I mean, things certainly could have gone
You have
better, but the fact that he
45 seconds
does have
to
a deck
review your
now, like
picks.
he knows he's in Goblins, barring some very strange sequence of events, means that he at least has a focus going to pack 3. And he does have the Marsh Flitter. Marsh Flitter is a very, very good card in the deck, so
Very good.
especially with double Warren Pilfers. So
Right.
I think that he's actually in a better spot than maybe he could have expected to end up, especially with one Empty the Warrens and possibly, looking at picking up a couple more of those. He's got a Desperate Ritual and a couple 1-drop spells to really make Warrens tick, and a Grinning Ignis. So
Yeah.
I think this is looking like a pretty good deck. He's even got an Executioner's Capsule and a Glacial Ray, so he's not
Yeah.
even short on removal. So I think that
So in this third pack, he's really looking to up the power level of his deck
Yes.
significantly. That's why he wants things like Mad Ante and another
Yeah.
Empty of the Warrens. He needs the big punch cards.
yeah, those two
Face
Tar
down
Pitcher is sick,
in a
especially with
shooting
double Warren
fight.
Pilfers. You can go off by just sacking a Warren Pilfers, playing a Warren Pilfers, sacking a Warren Pilfers.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
2 per turn.
Discount
Yeah, so
the face
that's
down
pretty
there
good.
of 15 cards.
And cards like Mad Auntie and Tar Pitcher and Empty the Warrens, it does not look like many people at the table are interested in them, so he doesn't even have to open them. As long as they're open kind of near him, he's got a pretty good shot. I mean, he got the Empty the Warrens very
About
late,
40
like
seconds.
9th or
Yes.
10th pick, so there's a foil extra paid, so there's that. All right, well, he's
There's
going to
nothing else for
yeah,
him.
kick things off with a Festering Goblin here, which is, again, not what you're excited to open, but,
That's kind of miserable, right? I mean, even in Goblins.
yeah, he could splash the Glenelenge Archmage, but I think it's just going to be much safer to take Festering Goblin. It's good with Empty the Warrens, and it's good with sack outlets like Marsh Flitter, but Glenelenge Archmage is by far the most powerful card in the pack, so I wouldn't fault him for taking a powerful card.
Sure.
Because I've never faulted anyone for doing that, but
That would be hypocritical.
yes. I mean, he's got to be looking at whether he can wheel Festering Goblin, because there's a pretty good shot of that, too. And if you're going to do that, you might as well just take the Archmage and kind of try to free roll the Goblin. So, certainly
a
not where
card.
you want to be here.
It seems likely that he'll wheel that Festering
Shuffle and pass
Goblin.
14 cards
Yeah,
to the
and-
This is his first pick from the third pack,
Yeah,
so
he
it's the
doesn't have any
highest chance.
fixing yet, though, so at this point, I don't know if he'd even want to end up playing it. It is
Yeah.
nice with the Pilferers, though.
collect.
So, all right. There's a great glass. Oh, there's the
Ooh.
Mad Auntie.
Oh,
And a Red
geez.
Cap and a Hirobi's Whisper.
Yes, all of those.
And a Face Faulter.
So this pack extremely good for him. What do
Yeah.
you take here? I know which one I like. I like the Mad Ante here.
I actually think with double Pilferers and a Marsh Flitter, I think the Red Cap is the pick.
You think so?
It's
You can
very close.
You can sack it.
But the fact
work
that
it
you
through?
that you can just kind of go off with it means that I think you're going to end up wanting the Red Cap. You might wheel Mad Auntie. I would not
is
bet
a
on
chance.
it. But
Yeah, you wouldn't expect it, but there's a chance.
yeah. So
Wow, he's really hemming and high on this pick.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, there's a
5 seconds.
Hirobi's Whisper just sitting there in the back,
yeah,
too.
I think Hirobi's Whisper does end up losing out to either of them. So he's going with the Mad Auntie, which again can't fault him for.
Shuffle
But
and pass 13
I think
cards
with
to
double
your
Warren
left.
Pilfers, I do like the possibility of getting back Red Cap. Mad Auntie is cheaper too, though, so he does help you curve out.
Collect.
All right, so he's a Tar Pitcher. Oh,
Wow.
there we go. I was just about to say he's a Tar Pitcher away from having most of
I
what
was
he
going to say,
wants.
how did you like, you called that
Well,
before
I-
you even looked at it? You're like, Tar Pitcher. There
I
it
was
is.
just naming the card that he was hoping for. So
I mean, like as you said it, I read it. It was very strange. Yeah. So Tar Pitcher is what he picked up here. Really nice. There's also, man, there's a lot. These packs have been really good for him. There's a
Yeah.
Tysus and a Rift Bolt as well.
yeah, but you can't get away from Tar Pitcher.
Not
here.
not at all.
Though Tar Pitcher would have been good with Murderous Red Cap, but
5 seconds.
it's still fairly strong with the rest of his deck. Now he really does want that Festering Goblin to wheel. It
cards.
got so much better with Tar Pitcher and a second Mad Auntie. Mog War Marshal is also a really big card for him
Yes.
here.
That's a
Huge.
booster to the left.
He has one, right?
Yeah, he has one, and he really needs to pick up like one or two more.
Yes.
Well, I mean, two more might be ambitious, but even just one would make his curve a lot better and make all the rest of his cards work much better.
All right. Let's look at this next one. There's a Street Wraith, a Grape Shot, Fury Charm.
Yeah, he kind of missed on this pack. I mean, he can pick up like a Grape Shot, I guess, and past that, there's not a whole lot else. There is the Fury Charm, which is a good sideboard card. There's a Lava Spike if you end up really deep into Arcane, but with only one Glacial Ray, I don't think that's going to
5
happen this time.
seconds.
Now, what is Grape Shot going to do in his deck if that's what he takes here? It looks like he just
It's
did.
mostly a sideboard card because it can, pretty reasonably do 2 damage, which means that against a
that's
deck with a
11
bunch of
cards.
1 toughness creatures, you do want it. It's kind of like a Fork Bolt, but for the most part, you don't really want to main deck that card.
Okay.
Not in a deck that doesn't have a ton of storm stuff going on. Oh, there's the Stinkweed Imp that.
And the Worm Harvest.
Yeah. So
Both just kind of mocking him at this point. This is a really powerful pack, and unfortunately, not for him.
yeah, I mean, there's Esprazoa, Blinding Beam, and Aether Snipe, all of which are fairly good in their respective archetypes. But
5 seconds.
Stinkweed Imp is fine, especially with Death Denied and 2 Warren Pilfers. You have the options of Stinkweed Imping your
card.
graveyard full and then going off in, in that sense.
Shuffle and pass. 10 cards.
I don't think you can play Worm Harvest off just the one Stinkweed Imp, though.
No.
Collect.
All right, so the number of chances for a Warren for Mogg War Marshal are getting lower, but another Warren Pilfer is still not terrible. Like
Now, how good is the third Warren Pilfers in this
it's
deck?
not as good as the first two.
Yeah.
Just the nature of 5 casting cost cards is that they kind of diminish as you get more of them.
Right.
So
5 seconds.
he's still gonna probably end up playing it, but I would be surprised
Pick
if
a
he's
card.
super happy about it. So he's still just sweating the low drops. I mean, that's really what you want here. Is he's got actually a pretty good long game with all the Pilfers and the Tar Pitcher,
Collect.
but I think he really needs just cards that cost 2 mana or less.
He needs bodies here.
Yeah.
And he finds yet another pack with basically nothing for him here.
Yeah, Vivid Craig is not a bad pickup because of the Glenalange Archmage.
Sure.
But
5 seconds.
past that, I mean, there isn't a whole lot here. There's a bridge from below, so
Pick a card.
go off with the dredge deck. Yeah.
Shuffle and
We'll have to
pass.
take a
8
look at his
cards.
build to see if he gets that
Yeah.
ambitious.
Collect.
So, there's a Auntie Snitch,
Okay.
which I think is what he's going to want just because of the casting cost.
Yeah, it looks like he's going to windmill it. I mean, it has
Yeah.
the word goblin on it, and it costs 3 or less mana, so he's
Yeah,
in.
he's also kind of due to wheel a Face Vaulter. There
5
was one
seconds.
in his second pick, so I think that there's a pretty good chance that happens.
Pick a card.
If it doesn't, he actually probably got unlucky.
Shuffle
but,
and pass. 7 cards.
let's see if he wheels the Festering Goblin in the Face Vaulter. He's got one more pack of new cards here. Or no, this is the last.
This is the one he
wheel, so-
opened. Yep. So there it is, Festering Goblin.
Yeah, so he wheeled the Festering Goblin, which also means he's going to wheel the Face Vaulter unless something very strange
5
is happening.
seconds.
So he ended
Not
up.
bad, but not the cards that he really wanted.
Pick a
We
card.
talked about the Mogg War Marshals, those
Shuffle
early
and pass
cards.
6
I mean,
cards.
with 2 mad antes, you want to have that filled out.
Collect.
Yeah, I think that even though Face Vaulter does the trick, wow, Empty the Horns is still there too?
Hey.
seconds.
So second,
Ooh, this is tough. He's got the Grinning Ignis, so the Empty the Warrens is
Pick
very
card.
attractive. I think you've got to just go with Empty. Like,
Shuffle and pass 5
it's
cards.
very close here, but yeah.
curve wise, he's unhappy, but power level wise, he
Yeah,
likes to see that.
it's another expensive card, but I don't really know what you can do to get out of that.
5 seconds.
You could actually, you could,
hate Fairy Macabre or take the
you
Blight
could,
Speaker.
yeah. One funny option would have been to take Ravenscram to go through Empty the Warrens, but I don't think that's what you really want to do. It just doesn't fit with the rest of the deck. Yeah, I think that the Manamorphose over Warspike Changeling could have definitely impacted the deck here too. But it's kind of hard to count on getting a second Empty the
Pick a
Warrens.
card.
Right,
So-
he picks up your Fury Charm here as
Yeah.
we wind down the pack for Yuya Watanabe here. We're in the
Collect.
World Championship. This is the first draft of the day. Both
Pick a
both
card.
draft pods have drafted. This is
Shuffle
the
and pass
Yeah.
2 cards.
the second pod.
Yeah, and the Modern Master Draft is actually very important for the championship because tiebreakers are based on what round you take your loss in.
Card.
So going 3-0 in the
That's
first
the
draft or
last
2-1 in the first
one.
draft
Show
is
it to
huge
coverage.
compared to like other formats.
Also,
And please put your cards face
there's
down
always
for a
that
single
tournament
card.
aspect of just getting off to a good start, getting your confidence up, having that kind of thing happen early.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we just got a chance to see Yuya draft. It didn't go as smoothly as it did for Raptor.
No, Raptor had an easier path though. I mean, you open Cloud Gut Ranger, you get a 6-pick Flicker Wisp or Amber Scout, and then you kind of end up in a spot where you know you want to do. So Yuya, for the most part, went for a more linear archetype.
Yeah, it was a lot tougher for Yuya. Hey, welcome back to the booth. Marshall Sutcliffe
everyone.
here with Luis Scott Vargas. And, I think that that's something that we see quite a bit in Modern Masters specifically. Because of the linear archetypes, it takes a few picks for the individual players to kind of figure out where they're stacking in. And then once everybody gets lined up, you can start figuring out where you're at.
Or a few
Unfortunately,
packs.
unfortunately for Yuya, it took pretty deep into the second pack before he really solidified
He basically
himself.
had options on Dredge, Thalids, fairies, and goblins.
Yes.
And it wasn't until kind of mid pack 2, fourth pick or pack 2 or what have you, where he decided, okay, goblins is what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I mean that's not ideal, right?
I mean there were definitely some picks in pack 1 where he could have had a couple more goblins cards had he known that's where he was going.
And remember, the first pick that we saw from him was Worm Harvest. Like
Yeah.
he clearly had some ideas about where he wanted to go with the format. Unfortunately, the first pack not only did not work with him as far as the actual dredge deck, but it also just didn't give him any direction at all.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to throw over now to the news desk while the players build the decks. We're going to have some stuff over for there. When we come back, though, Luis and I will be covering actual matches
Indeed.
of the World Championship in Modern Masters Draft. I don't need to hype that up any more than I already have. So let's send
Sounds
it
like
over.
you did a good job.
Yeah, to the news desk. We'll see you guys in a little bit.
So there you have it. Reigning Player of the Year, Josh Utter-Leyton, 9 out of 10. Reigning World Champion, Yuya Watanabe, what out of 10? Zach Hill, Brian David Marshall.
I would have to say about a 5. I think he's got some really powerful cards, and his late game's very good, but his mana curve is not anything to get excited about, and a bad mana curve is not what you want with an aggressive Goblin deck.
5 out of 10, about right?
6.5.
Okay.
I think his deck's capable. I mean, even though his mana curve's a little top heavy for a Goblin deck,
Right.
it's still not top heavy for a Modern Masters draft. I think he can come out quickly. I would love to have seen that Grinning Ignis over the second Worm Harvest early. I don't know if you could hear me at home screaming Grinning Ignis, but I like his deck.
The format is incredibly deep, and one of the things that when you do draft it a lot, you can start in one place, find it, the door is shut, move into another, find that still isn't working out, and somewhere around the early to mid part of pack 2, you can work out where that kind of avenue 3 is and still be fine.
Right, you can pass a Yosei with your first pick and then still find a deck to play.
Yeah, that's what I said, but a lot longer. Yeah, all right. So those are our 2 drafters. Remember that for those of you who are not sure what pods mean, they built in their 8 seats, and they stay there with those 7 potential opponents. So this morning, the left-hand side and the right-hand side cannot mix up. So they will build, it just guarantees that the cards from the table are where they are, and they stay that way. I can tell you that we have some pairings for round 1. We're going to save those for later, but there are some fantastic matches, as you would expect. Every round is going to be like that here at the World Championships. So the players now have 30 minutes to build their decks. We say thanks very much to Brian David Marshall. He is going to get out there, go and find out what everyone's doing. This man is going to be everywhere this weekend, backstage, front stage, up above, down below, everything that moves. He's our finger on the pulse. So he's off to do that. And that means, go on, shoo. And this means that Zach Hill is with me now for the next 30 minutes to tell you about these 16 players who are here for the World Championship. They are the best of the best of the best right now in the world of Magic. They've all got their stories to tell, Zach. Some of them are inevitably outsiders because someone has to be the unexpected underdog in a field of 16, even if you're great. Some of them, huge storied resumes sprinkled through the history of the game. Let's meet the 16 players, and we're going to do this alphabetically. We're no bias at all. We're going to show you our first player, and this is Dmitry Butakov of Russian Federation, 24 years old, and he comes from, I kid you not, Siberia. Siberia, for those of you who don't have a map, is quite a long way away. It's Europe, but it's 6 time zones away from Amsterdam, and that's almost the moon. So, Zach, tell us about Dmitry Butakov.
Well, I mean, I think the thing to really get excited about Dmitry showing up here is your incredible Russian accent that
Thank
you debuted, but also just the possibility that this represents for a lot of players, especially through Magic Online.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people live in regions where it's hard to access a group of committed testing group to work with, to improve in real life, to have a lot of game stores. And so I think this is really a triumph for players that really have to be playing online in order to practice and get better at the game. And clearly Butakov, I mean, he won a giant qualifier for another giant qualifier to get to this point. And I think that represents the skill that he brings, even though he's not in a region where he can be around of a lot of committed players.
That's right, and not just the region with the committed players there, but you looked at he has no Pro Tours, no Grand Prix experience at all, and that is basically because, well, where would he go?
Exactly.
Where would he be playing in those events? So he's really our mystery man in the field of 16. And one of the comparisons we've been talking about a lot is with Reed Duke, the previous winner. And you think, well, is he going to do better than Reed last year? He's certainly looking to build. He's got no pressure on himself. He's not saying I want to win this. He'd like to, but he's not expecting that. He's expecting to build on this, come to more GPs, get himself on the Pro Tour regularly. He has an invite to Theros he'll be coming to as a result of the mocks. He'll be coming to that. So that's Dmitry Budakov, the first of our 16. Who have we got next, Zach Hill?
Well, we've actually got Pro Tour Return to Ravnica champion Stanislav Sivka.
All right, there you see on screen his resume.
Yeah, he's from the Czech Republic. Like I said, he's won Pro Tour Return to Ravnica. He's got 2 Grand Prix top 8s, 109 lifetime pro points. But despite all that, still kind of comparatively an up-and-comer. He won a lot of those pro points in this season. Now, an interesting thing really quick about the tournament and the deck he played, he won in Modern, and he will be playing Modern at this event.
Which is all well and good, but it's not quite the Modern that he played when he won. And let's talk a bit, it's breakfast time in various parts of the world, so let's talk about eggs, and let's talk about chess. Talk to me about eggs and chess.
Yeah, well, Sivka won Pro Tour Return to Ravnica with a combo deck, Eggs, whose marquee card, Second Sunrise, got banned.
Yeah.
Now, the reason we talk about chess is Sivka's a chess master, and a lot of that combo deck was sort of a very complex series of chessy interactions. You had to just think long-term. You started from the very first turn of the game, setting up a long-term strategic win. But it's going to be interesting to see how he handles Modern with that deck not available to him.
Yeah, it was very interesting. He sort of said, Grandmaster, you really, really have to practice, and I don't really have enough time for that right now. But an international master, yeah, I could see that in the next few years. And I went, oh, really?
On top of everything else.
Yeah, and you're going to see that chess theme coming quite a few times back as we talk about our 16. It's something that's really coming to the fore in Magic in recent times. So that's our second player from the Czech Republic, Stanislav Sivka. Number 3 is someone we've already mentioned. Let's take a look from the United States, our first representative from Team USA, as it were. He's only 23. He is the nicest man alive. It turns out to be none other than the 2011 Magic Online World Champion, Reed Duke.
So, I think the thing to remember about Reed, especially when we mentioned this talking about Budakov, he came in dead last in this tournament last year. 16th place, really a brutal sort of wake-up call for him. And I remember you talking to me, Rich, about how he sort of stayed up really late in his hotel room one night, just writing down a list of everything that went wrong and everything he could do better.
Yep, you can see that list on Walking the Plains, the actual artifact itself. 50 years from now, that will be part of Magic history, that list, because it was so cathartic, and it was so very much about, this is everything I did incorrectly. And when you're feeling low, to make yourself say this was wrong, and it was really granular as well. It was this land over this spell, just incorrect pick here, and here. And he has come back roaring since. Right,
he finished 10th in the Pro Player of the Year race last year with 52 pro points. That's quite a big rebound from last place at what was the Players' Championship at that point, the World Championship. Also, it's not just a matter of the points and statistics he accumulated. He's really been an evangelist of the Jund deck that has come to define a lot of the standard landscape. He has a 67% win rate at Grand Prix, meaning that, he's traveled a lot and has been winning a lot. So I think his performance at this event last year really catalyzed a very successful season.
Yeah, one of the interesting things about last year was when we were talking to him, I mentioned this to him last night, 1 year ago, on the eve of the then Players' Championship, he said, I am here hoping not to embarrass myself. That was his goal coming into last year. And you look at that and you think, I wonder if in some way there was a defensiveness to his posture, a conservatism, a feeling of, do I belong here? And he talked last night about, I feel my feet are under the table. I feel like these are my, my contemporaries and my peers, not I'm the guy sitting in the corner looking around at all these stars of the game. So I think Reed's obviously going to do a lot better than last year. It would not be tough to do better than last year. He was 2-10. Ouch. So that is Reed Duke. Let's move on and we go across to our Latin America representative. This is contestant number 4 in the mass elimination that is the World Championship. Willie Adel, 34, one of our older competitors, Grand Prix Toronto champion you see in 2012. He has 4 Pro Tour top 8s, and they go back a long way, Zach.
Yeah, one of his first major appearances was actually at Pro Tour Charleston, alongside another stalwart of Brazilian Magic, Paulo Vitor Dama da Rosa. Willie winning the Latin American rep this year, really a spot that a lot of people expected to go to Paulo. So I think this is, in many ways, his time to shine. He's had a really good season. He was a runner-up to a Pro Tour this season, and he's been a runner-up at a Pro Tour before. So, I mean, Willie's been around for a while, but has always kind of played second fiddle to Paulo. I think now he's taking the lead.
Yeah, twice runner-up at Pro Tour. Of course, 2006, 2007 behind Jan-Moritz Merkel, and then Pro Tour returned to Ravnica, made the top 8 there. Now, the big thing about Willie, though, is he sort of got this weird sort of U-shaped career where it begins in this fire of awesome at the Pro Tours, gradually sinks away to a real kind of low point of Worlds 2009, where I happened to see him middle of day 2, and this was when you were playing 3 days across the 3 formats. And he just didn't want to be there anymore. He was not putting in the work. He wasn't getting the results. He knew he was better than the results he was putting up. And basically, a lot of stuff was very difficult back at home. His wife was very ill. And just basically, Magic inevitably took a back seat. We didn't see him for a couple of years. You look at his Pro Tour list, 2009 to 2011, he just vanishes. He's not playing at GPs, not traveling, nothing. Then you start to see him again, and it's like, yep, I think I've got my life in order again. Wife's fine, family's good, business is going well. I can start thinking about Magic the way Magic needs to be thought about. And since then, he gets himself back on the tour. He wins a Grand Prix in Toronto, and top 8, as we say, Pro Tour return to Ravnica.
And you can tell the thing that's so resonant with me about that, Rich, you can tell it's not just a string of luck. He wrote an article this year about the Zoo deck he was playing. It's one of the best articles on Magic that I have ever read, really demonstrating just a comprehensive, thorough understanding of the formats that he puts the time to play in. And I think that's reflected in his results. You know, he has 4 PT top 8s and only 24 Pro Tours played.
Yeah.
That is an incredible batting average, and that suggests that when Willie puts the time to know a format, it really pays off.
4 down, 12 to go. Next, we're going to have to speed up at this rate. Sorry, we just talk so much. Eric Froelich, so much to tell you. That's the thing. Here he comes from the United States. He is 29. He's been playing forever. And he has 3rd player of the year. He was 65 points in the last season, made his debut at Pro Tour London in 1999. Most recently, of course, top 8 at Pro Tour Gatecrash.
Yeah, with a really innovative deck on top of course, you know, his 9 lifetime Grand Prix top 8s. All that together, you know, plus his performance this year, his performance historically, has really made him a favorite of a lot of the players going into this event. You know, you're just talking around the hall, especially last night as we had registration. You know, invariably you're going to ask people who they think is going to win. A lot of people said it was Ifra.
Yeah, certainly he is a big favourite to be in amongst the top 4 come Sunday. Remember, that's what happens. They play 12 rounds over 2 days, and then the top 4 come back for head-to-head in Modern, as it will be, to duke it out for the final and the title of World Champion. Eric Froelich, next. Let's go back to Europe. Let's go back to the Czech Republic, our second Czech player, and it is Martin Juza.
Martin Juza, a staggering 16 Grand Prix top 8s. Really one of the, you know, globe-trotters along with people like Shuhei Nakamura. But, you know, he has a pair of PT top 8s as well. So, you know, Juza just has been a solid force on the Pro Tour, particularly over the last, 5 years.
So let's make a case for him not quite getting there. 2 Pro Tour top 8s. Right. Most of the guys at the absolute peak of their game and the game over a number of years get 3, 4, 5. Martin is on the ballot for the Hall of Fame this year. At lunchtime, we will announce the Hall of Fame. My guess is he comes up a bit short for Hall of Fame this year. in part because of those 2 Pro Tour top 8s. And he's not a Pro Tour champion, like inevitably, by definition, quite a lot of this field are. Some of them are multi-Pro Tour champions. So that would be my case against Yusa. The case for the people he's playing with: Yuya, Shuhei, Ben S, and Stan Cifka. That is a group of 5 who are testing together. Super good. And by the way, against Shuhei Nakamura, he is 8-3 lifetime. These 2 great friends from across the continents. So Martin Yusa, does he go up? Does he go down? I think he ends up somewhere in the middle. I have him right in the middle of this pack, but we'll see. Someone who I think is very, very good is up next. From the United States, it is Mr. Brian Kibler. There you see him, happy man pretty much all the time. He is 32, and what a career.
Yeah, I mean, 2 Pro Tour wins, 5 total top 8s. It's funny you mention his career. You know, Kibler thought of as kind of an old school player. He won Grand Prix Toronto back in 1997.
Yeah.
But both of his wins and 4 of his top 8s have come since his comeback around 2008. So he's a player that's really been putting up solid results throughout the entire course of the game's history.
Yeah, Austin and Honolulu, most recently his wins, but of course he made the top 8 of Honolulu that first time. So one thing about him, sort of anecdotal, nothing to do with his play skill at all, is he really struggles with jet lag. When he comes to Europe, he has tried over a number of European trips, a lot of different scenarios of stay awake till this time, take this or that, have sort of extra daylight stuff going on. He finds it very difficult, and if you follow him on Twitter, you will have seen various things about, yep, apparently it's day 3 when you only get 2 hours sleep. So, has he been here long enough to be on the European time zone? Right now, we are at 1:30 p.m. here in Amsterdam. And some of you I know in the US are back at 4:30 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, and so on. Early morning for a lot of you in the US. So how does Kibler cope with the jet lag is one of my question marks for him. Who have we got next, Zach?
We're taking a look, actually, at Tom Martell. I was 2nd in the Player of the Year race, really tight race this past year. Pro Tour Dragon's Maze champion, so he's coming off a lot of momentum right now. Actually, when we had our sort of informal survey of the coverage team, he was a lot of people's pick to win.
Yeah, he's someone I would never willingly get rid of if I was drafting. I would hate to pass Tom Martell to one of my coverage colleagues in a draft. I know a lot of you at home do that. You'll take the names, you're like, I'm going to pick him, and you'll do cards, and you'll do teams, and so on. Great fun. We do that at home as well. So a phenomenal drafting record in the past season, 75%. He was 27-9 in draft. This time, he has a very small team. I mean, it's a partnership. It's with Shahar Shenhar, who we'll get to later on. And the one person, arguably, he doesn't want to be seeing across the table, Ben Stark. They've played 6 times. Tom Martell has beaten Ben Stark 0 times. So that's one of the big lopsided matchups. We will move on. We've done 8. We have 8 more to go. Let's look at a man we can barely fit all his information onto a screen. It's Shuhei Nakamura. And whatever way you slice it, $320,525 US. That's a lot of sleeves.
Well, and over the course of that, not only has he accumulated that much money, he's accumulated 530 lifetime pro points. 5 Pro Tour top 8s. Now, the interesting thing is these occurred from 2004 to 2008, and yet Shuhei still accumulated 54 pro points this season, 6 overall in the Player of the Year race. So he wasn't necessarily grabbing those top 8s like he used to, but he's still performing, at the highest level over and over and over again.
You see, I think something's changed with Shuhei, and this has got nothing to do with magic. This has got to do with Shuhei being a different human being than he was in 2005. When he used to come along with Kenji Samura and Tomohiro Saito to the European Grand Prix in 06, 07, 08, the 3 of them would walk in, lovely guys, but they all knew they were better than everyone else. They used to walk in to a European Grand Prix and go, yeah, there's probably 3 of you who can hack us, right?
Right.
And Shuhei doesn't have that, I almost want to call it swagger. And it's not a physical swagger because he's such an unassuming guy. But in 06, 07, 08, he knew he was better than everyone else. And now he knows he's better than almost everyone else. And I think that's critical in a field like this. You need some swagger I think, to really take you to the absolute pinnacle.
I mean, that's not to say that he can't pull that out. I mean, he's definitely got, he won 2 Grand Prix titles in 2012 alone, so he definitely knows what it takes to win.
Yeah, his play skill is not shabby. That is not what I'm suggesting. That's very important. Let's move on to another of our American players, and this time it is David Ochoa. I believe we have reached this deep into the webcast without saying the words Channel Fireball, and now I've ruined it. So here's David Ochoa. He's 32, had his first Pro Tour top 8 at Pro Tour Return to Ravnica in Seattle at the back end of last year. Had a conversation with him this time last year. I said, where do you think you are in the field? He said, in the middle. I had a conversation with him yesterday. I said, where do you think you are in the field? He went, in the middle. And I think he's probably about right with that. He is, again, someone who could do what happened last year, which is essentially sync without trace. He finished 14th of the 16. Or it doesn't take him too long to get from a notional 8th, 9th up to 4th, and we could see him on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, and you do have to think, with Reed, for example, his poor performance at this event last year really sort of lit a fire under him. I do wonder if, Ochoa, also Raptor Josh Utterlayton, who didn't have a great performance around this time either, sort of said, okay, well, let's pull it together for this year's World Championships.
So, where do you think the benefit of Channel Fireball comes for an event like this? Do you think it matters that he spends most of his time testing with those people?
Well, I think it's got to be really weird how split up the team is. Of the 16 players of this event, 7 of them are formally on Team Channel Fireball, and you have a couple of other affiliates as well. So I think there's a big cost to not being able to take your entire testing group in with you. Now, Ochoa is part of the 5-person, for this team.
Yeah, for this it's a quartet.
Team.
So it's like Ochoa, Player of the Year Josh Utterlayton, Brian Kibler, and Eric Froelich.
Oh, pardon me, 4 people.
So those are the 4, the quartet, who are testing together for this. But that does leave some notable names on the outside, including our own Luis Scott Vargas in the booth, for example. Although I imagine he's participated in some way. All right, let's move on from David Ochoa. We stay in the United States, although we also go to Israel, because Shahar Shenhar, he's only 19, he is your Israeli national champion for this year. And for those of you who listen to my audio preview on magicthegathering.com earlier in the week, I think he's going to take a picture holding the trophy at the end of the weekend in the team event. I think Israel have a terrific squad this year. But meanwhile, he has 12 rounds to get through against the best of the best of the best. So what's your take on Shahar?
Well, Shahar, no stranger to titles. He has 3 GP wins in 2011, 2012, and 2013. So he knows how to win events, and he knows how to win events not only in this decade, but in this year. That said, he hasn't been that successful on the Pro Tour. A lot of kind of middling finishes. A lot of times he didn't even make day 2. On the other end, if you look at our champion from last year, Yuya Watanabe, a lot more success on the Grand Prix circuit than the PT circuit there, too. Although Yuya obviously has PT top 8s, unlike Shahar. But my point is, I really think, even without that PT resume, if Shahar really puts it together, and he was testing with Tom Martell for this event, another favorite, he really could do well here.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the Pro Tours is you see almost always when you wade through the records of the greats of the game, unless they started right at the beginning when they were clearly better than everyone else straight away. For the most part now, players come in and they don't do well at the Pro Tour. They do take 3, 4, 5 events to get somewhere. And of the 8 Pro Tours that Shahar has played, he's got a 22 and a 23rd as his best 2 finishes, and 4 or 5 well outside the money. But he's still only 19. And that means he started Pro Tours when he was sort of 16, 17, didn't know anyone. Last Pro Tour, he was on Channel Fireball. Now, that's an upward curve if ever there was one. So don't be too concerned by that no Pro Tour top 8s. He is one of the most likely to put that right when we get to Theros later in the year. All right, so where in the world do we go next? Well, we go to the region of Asia Pacific, and a flag that you don't often see in the world of Magic, that is the Hong Kong flag. The 25-year-old Li Shi Chan, who I remember very clearly from Grand Prix Birmingham in 2008. I covered that event. It was a monster top 8. It featured Jelger Wiegersma. It featured 2007 Pro Tour champion from Valencia, Remy Fortier. It had Hall of Famer Raf Levy in that. And Jonathan Randall, who made top 8 of Worlds in Chiba a couple of years back. So a really strong GP that he won there. What's your take on Lee?
I mean, really, I think Lee is making very smart decisions coming into this tournament.
Okay.
You know, we can't talk about what decks people are playing or anything like that. But very generally speaking, a lot of players are coming in saying, you know what I want to do? Like, I'm very good at Magic. I want to play a deck that allows me to outplay my opponents. You know, it doesn't have any super favorable matchups, but I'm going to be decent against everything, and I'm going to play Magic, and I'm going to defeat people. But the problem is, when you have 16 of the best players in the world, you have to be really confident in your edge for that to work out. Now, Lee, a phenomenal player, obviously. He's top 8 in a Pro Tour, has 3 Grand Prix top 8s. But his strategy was a little different. He says, look, like, yeah, sort of like you were talking about at the show, like, I'm not going to say that I am better than Yuya Watanabe. I'm not going to say that I'm better than Player of the Year Josh Utter-Layton. What I'm instead going to do is try to predict the decks they're playing, play something that's very well positioned against those. And I think that is an incredibly smart strategy coming into an event like this, where you're going to need to get a little bit lucky. You're going to have to win some coin flips, and you're going to have to get some good pairings. So I like the way that Lee is thinking about this event.
Okay, so the big move for Li Shichan, if you're watching at home from Hong Kong and you're a fan of Lee, then you're kind of looking at the back end of day 1, because that's when we hit standard, and that's where he thinks he's might be able to make a move. So he comes out of Modern Masters 2-1. You could easily see him run the field in the second part of the day. That is certainly his game plan for getting to a top 4. And it's worth saying that for those of you who watched last year at the Players' Championship, if you go 4-2, Zach, after 6 rounds at a Pro Tour, you're in like 153rd place, and you are barely above the even money watermark. You're 3-2. You win best of 3 in the 6th round. You go, oh, that's a relief. I'm like 4-2 now. I need to win one to get into day 2 and so on. But here, 4-2 overnight is a monster record.
Right.
If you like go 2-1 in MMA draft against that table, and then 2-1 in standard, 4-2 overnight, that's way on the way to a top 4 finish.
Right.
So adjust your sights accordingly. There are no 8-0s. There are not 23 6-1s going into the last round. This is all about tiny, tiny margins. And maybe that deck choice is Lee's. We will see. Let's move on. And we have an American up next. It is Ben Stark, one of the front runners, I think it's fair to say, on the Hall of Fame ballot for this year. We will tell you the result of that at lunchtime with the Pro Tour historian, Mr. Brian David Marshall. Do not miss that. So, what do we know about Ben Stark?
I mean, Ben, you know, he won Pro Tour Paris in 2011. He's another player that was kind of old school, had 2 Pro Tour top 8s in his earlier career, came back, got 2 more top 8s. He also won Grand Prix Indianapolis, and has been really an essential part of Team Channel Fireball. You know, we talk a lot about the fact that Ben's a limited master. He does a lot of the work for Channel Fireball's understanding of draft formats, but he's no slouch at Constructed either. I mean, I really think he's kind of just a good Magic player. And that transitions to being good at Limited as well. But, you know, at any point in time, ever since Ben is active, if you ask players who some of the best in the world are, Ben's name has always been a part of that conversation.
Yeah, it's very recent, but one of my all-time great Magic memories is at the past weekend. I had Frank Karsten's draft in front of me. I had Matej Zatlkaj, twice Pro Tour top 8, and Pro Tour champion Simon Gertzen on my right, streaming analysis of Frank Karsten's draft. And on my left, I had Ben Stark doing the DVD commentary on Frank Karsten's draft. And I'm just like, I am the luckiest Magic player alive. It was a phenomenal thing just to have Ben go, yeah, that might come round. Yeah, you probably don't want that. Yeah, that's going to take him too far deep into that arc. I'm just like, wow. And we're going to have Ben Stark live here at the news desk to take us through the intricacies of Team Limited later in the weekend. Do you think Ben has a shot at winning this thing?
I think he does. I think he's got the raw Magic ability. And again, you know, we're talking about if what players are doing, and, you know, it depends on the specific matchup, but if what players are doing are trying to outplay each other, and Ben's greatest greatest strength is when he's sitting down at the table making in-game decisions playing Magic. A lot of the edge that other players think they might be bringing into that is actually going to be favoring Ben. So I would put Ben in my list of like the 3 or 4 people most likely to win this event.
Okay, let's move on. And we move on to the man who came up on top of the whole world pile last time around, your 2012 to 13 Player of the Year. And doesn't he look pleased about it? Josh Utter-Leyton, 27 of the United States, and of course, a key component of Team Channel Fireball.
Yeah, he's really one of the principal deck designers behind a lot of Channel Fireball's decks. What Channel Fireball is known for doing is taking the deck that everyone's like, yeah, this is going to be the deck to beat, and just building the best possible version of it. And specifically building versions that beat the ways that people think they're going to beat that deck. So he's really sort of a next level thinker. I mean, he had 77 pro points last season. A totally amazing number. 2010 national champ, 4 PT top 8s. This year he got second at Grand Prix Atlantic City, actually with Bant Hexproof, which at the time was kind of a rogue list. So he knows how to build excellent versions of streamlined decks, but also how to change it up when he needs to. And I think that's a combination that suits him very well.
I talked to Simon Gertz, and obviously a lot because he's on the European coverage team, and I said, is it not just that you won your Pro Tour, it was the Jund Pro Tour, but the fact that you won it with the best version of the best deck, and he said in a perfect world, that is the pinnacle. Because if you make a metagame call, that feels wonderful and hooray, you win, but you still partly think, yeah, and I basically got 4 of my match wins because I predicted the field.
Right.
But when you build a deck that 140 players are playing, and you know that yours is the best of that 140 deck lists, that's something that stays with you forever. Even if you don't win the tournament, obviously you then win the whole thing. Phenomenal. And Josh is like that. Like you say, it's just these little tweaks here and there, which makes it hard in some ways to explain his awesomeness. Like some players, you think of Luis Scott Vargas, when you watched him play in Berlin, you watched him play against Gabriel Nassif on his run in Kyoto, it was readily apparent what a completely ridiculously awesome player he was and is. But Josh, because so much of it is almost under the surface, it's much harder to just see quite how he is beating everyone. And I think that was a really good point of that's kind of how he's doing it.
Right.
Great stuff. 14 down, 2 to go. It's the W's, and here's number 1. Word for winner says Yuya Watanabe, 24, twice the Player of the Year. Zach, you go through it all. It's just a ridiculous career.
Yeah, I mean, 2 Player of the Year titles is utterly unreal. 19 Grand Prix top 8s.
6 wins. Just the 6.
Yeah, merely 6 wins,
of course. Feeling the shame.
Yeah, and a 70% draft record overall. And again, Booster Draft, one of the most skill-intensive formats that exist. The thing I remember about Yuya is how well he was doing. I believe it was Magic 2010 when people were saying, oh, this format isn't all that skill testing. Why are we having Grand Prix in this format? And then he just like cleared out that Grand Prix season, knowing things about the format that no one else could understand. And that, I think, is Yuya's greatest strength, of being just a little bit ahead of the curve. You know, when he won this event last year, he was playing the Jund deck in Modern that went on to define the format, that ended up getting Bloodbraid Elf banned. Well, at the time, not everyone else understood that. Not everyone understood how good Liliana the Veil was in the format, but he knew it just a little bit before everybody. And that pays off a lot in his finishes.
When you're feeling very anxious because on Monday there's no live Magic to watch, you could do a lot worse than go and watch the final of last year between Yuya Watanabe and Shota Yasuoka. It was a bonkers final with incredible skill, lots of swings back and forth. The narrative of last year was that Shota was running the table against everyone, and Yuya just quietly sat there and quietly won the final. And it was one of the single best matches I think I've had the privilege to see. So that is well worth a watch, like I say, on Monday when you're going, when is it next? So that's Yuya Watanabe, and that leaves us with 1 to go, and here he comes, the other W, and it is your most recent Pro Tour champion, and it is Craig Wescoe.
You know, Craig Wesco's career began a long time ago. His first Pro Tour, I think, was in 1996. He designed the mono black deck that Brian Davis took to the finals of Pro Tour Chicago 1999. But most of his Pro Tour success has come pretty recently, and he plays, you know, creature decks, usually white creature decks. It's sort of a joke that people are like, oh, what white weenie deck is Wesco showing up with next? But the thing to remember is, like, his deck at Pro Tour Dragon's Maze was probably just the best deck in the room. I mean, it was just very good. It wasn't just like, oh, he put a bunch of creatures in and started attacking with them. All of his decisions are carefully thought out, you know, playing angles against specific elements of the metagame. And he's just a really tight player too. And he knows how to attack and block. And that serves him very well on the Pro Tour.
Okay, let's talk deck choice. He's a player readily identified with a particular archetype. Everyone in the field knows what that archetype is. Is the disadvantage of everyone knowing enough to take him off White Weenie and onto something radically different? Or do you just have to say, this is who I am, this is what I do, try and stop me?
Here's the thing. I mean, the way that you beat White Weenie is that you kill all of its creatures and then gain card advantage somehow. The thing is, that's like good in Magic anyway, right? So it's not as though like people are gonna have a huge edge. It's like, oh, to beat me, you need to cast removal spells and gain card advantage.
Right, so it's not like he's playing Dredge.
Exactly, right,
Where you
precisely.
just go 8 cards in the board, 12 cards in the board, never losing to Wesco
Right.
ever.
He's not playing Affinity, something that's like super vulnerable.
Right,
you
okay.
know? So I personally think that the advantage of knowing how your deck plays, knowing how to play it well, and probably knowing how to play against the cards that are good against you, better than your opponents know how to play those cards, is actually a pretty big edge. You see that in people like Patrick Sullivan with red decks too.
Okay, so those are your 16. Now, as we say, they play 3 rounds this morning, 3 this afternoon, although we're actually into the afternoon already now. So 3, then 3 at standard. Tomorrow they come back, they do M14 draft, and then down the stretch it will be modern. At the end of 12 rounds, the best 4 records will advance to Sunday. Now, at that point, let's take a look at our scoreboard. And this will show you where the 16 ended up at our 2 draft tables coming in this morning. So on the left of your screen, you can see table 1. Willie Adel, Shenhar, Nakamura, Duke, Butakov, Ochoa, Utter-Leighton and Froelich. And for those of you waking up around the world, we know that lots of you on the east coast of the United States, you're well into your morning now, but on the far coast, the west coast, it's still very early. So Zach, a lot of people may not have seen our 2 drafts earlier on. Let's just recap. What did you make of Josh Utter-Leighton's draft?
I really liked Josh's deck. He's basically just a white-red aggressive deck. There's a few giants in there, which is normally what you think of when you're playing white-red. But by and large, he's got a solid mana curve, a little bit of card advantage, and some good removal spells. And you don't always have to have an adorable linear strategy, you know, to win in Modern Masters.
An adorable linear
Precious
strategy.
linear strategy. Turns out that the things that are always good, which are playing spells on a curve and killing your opponent's creatures, still good in Modern Masters too. So I actually think Josh's deck, pretty excellent list.
Okay, and as we said about the whole 4-2 thing overnight, 2-1 represents a big deal.
Yeah.
So in a sense, what you first want to do is not go 0-3,
Exactly.
because from 0-3 you're going to need best part of 8-1 over the remaining 3 formats. And who'd want to do that against a field like this? So obviously Josh is well ahead of that.
Right.
And you would have to think he's at least a 2-1, and with luck, sits there playing for the pod in round 3. Fair enough? Let's take a look at the scoreboard and look at the other side of the bracket. So table 2 featured Li Shi-Chan of Hong Kong, Martin Muser, Yuya, Ben Stark, Tom Martell, Craig Wesco, Brian Kibler, and the other Czech player Stanislav Sivka. So on there we saw Yuya Watanabe. Now this is a much tougher story to narrate in some ways, because it began so clearly with a card that is not necessarily the most powerful card in Modern Masters, which is pretty tough to do because Modern Masters is so absurd anyway, but a Worm Harvest.
Right.
Now, Worm Harvest is Chapter 1. It was a dark and stormy night, and Yuya Watanabe took Worm Harvest. Dun, dun, dun. We're going somewhere with that. But this wasn't a Pulitzer Prize winning novel, was it? It was a kind of twisty, turny, Not entirely sure this goes where we want it to
Yeah,
go.
it was a little bit of a rough draft, or at least it was confusing. He started out with Worm Harvest over Yosei the Morningstar, so clearly representing some sort of graveyard-based dredge strategy, traditionally black-green. Worm Harvest, of course, hybrid, so you can do that. Tried to pick up some token generators in Thallid and different Sporosaur Thallid, a bunch of different Thallids, as well as a Tysus. So he was sort of setting up a black-green mid-range graveyard plan, got a second Word Harvest, but never really got all of the ways to fill his graveyard. And so he kind of had to abandon that plan. He had an early Marsh Flitter and went into Black-Red Goblins. But going into Black-Red Goblins didn't happen super early, so he wound up with a deck with a lot of powerful cards, a pair of Mad Aunties among them, Empty the Warrens, 2 Grinning Ignis to enable that, but not really an excellent mana curve. And I think that might come back to haunt him.
Okay, I have one question about Yuya's draft. There was a moment where an abyss opened up before me where I watched him with the Mad Auntie and the Murderous Redcap.
Right.
There is a scenario where Murderous Redcap, of course, never comes back.
Right.
But Mad Auntie does only belong in a Black-Red Goblins deck. It has no use anywhere else. It's like a Lorwyn block draft. You know, it's like, I'm tribal, I'm of use to you and you only. Dare he have taken the Murderous Redcap and tried to get the Mad Auntie round?
You know, I think that's a reasonable pick. Murderous Redcap in most environments traditionally a clearly superior card. It's removal, it's card advantage, all those things that you want. That and it's also a goblin, which works out well. That said, Watanabe still had some curve issues. He had a lot in the 4 slot. He had a pair of Warspike Changelings. He had a little bit of removal. He still definitely would have liked the red cap, but Auntie made the rest of his deck better. And it made a lot of his cards like Face Vaulter better. And the thing is, while it's best in a Goblin deck, it's still a 2/2 that can regenerate on defense. So, I mean, a lot of black decks are not going to be just unhappy to pick that up, even if they're not Goblin linears. So I think he made the right choice in picking up the Auntie.
Okay, so that was the drafts. But now we get to see the players in action. The players have been building their decks. They had 30 minutes to do so. So now it's time for round 1. And this is what we've got coming your way. In the feature match area, well, obviously half the field, because there are only 8 matches altogether. We have Reed Duke, and he's going to be up against Josh Utter-Leyton, the Player of the Year. Now, I think that's a really interesting matchup within that table, because we saw just on the edge of camera a Kithkin Greatheart going to Reed. We know that there's only one Amru Scout in Josh Utter-Leyton's, not just his deck, but he didn't really see any. And I do wonder whether Reed may turn out to be the Black-White Rebels deck. And that, or even the Thundering Shaman, Blind Spot Giants, Hill Coma Giant, the Giants red-white deck that Josh decided not to go down the path of, with that Thundercloud Shaman having to go somewhere. So I think in terms of the cards, this may turn out to be a great matchup. Now, of course, watch Reed Duke suspend search for tomorrow. But, those are the breaks. We haven't seen the deck list yet here. But I guess you would take Josh in the blind, having seen his draft.
Having seen his draft seems really good. He also has like Glacial Ray and a couple of things to do with it, which are pretty good if you're in a white mirror matchup, and just a decent amount of removal spells in general. So I mean, not seeing exactly what Reed has, Reed's deck could be even more amazing for all we know. But I think I'm gonna have to say Josh probably in the driver's seat.
Okay. Also in the feature match area, we have Tom Martell, and he is up against the Dragon Master, Mr. Brian Kibler. That's pretty heavy.
A lot of personality in that match.
A lot of personality in that match. We will not be starting with them, though. Now, on text coverage, there are lots of little hidden stories in these fields because, of course, they end up at the top tables. They end up at the big tournaments. They start to have a bit of a personal history with each other. Martin User is against Ben Stark. Arguably, the top 2 limited players on Earth active in Magic right now. They have played 4 times in competitive Magic. Ben Stark has yet to win. User going for 5-0 against Ben Stark. That'll be our text feature, which you'll get on Daily MTG. But we will begin our first video of live Magic here at the World Championship is the defending champion, Yuya Watanabe, with his start off with Worm Harvest, end up with Goblins, hopefully it's okay, up against Stanislav Sivka of the Czech Republic. I think Yuya could be in trouble here, but we'll see. So it is time to get down to the booth. One of the great players of all time, Mr. Luis Scott Vargas, will be down there for us. He's there all weekend, chained to the desk as he should be. And first, for round one, let's go down to the booth and join Mr. Marshall Sutcliffe.